Aegon's praise sounded sincere. He clearly hadn't known about Leora's intervention. She'd appeared after his escape from Nocthera. Still, he'd sensed something had happened, so he'd sent Khaleesi on ahead and lingered to watch. He had tried to return to the heights, but Leora's barriers had turned him back, and Fry had marked his presence the moment they descended. His aura had returned in full. "Aegon, you knew everything from the beginning, didn't you?" Snow asked, cold. "I did. Khaleesi has been mine for a long time. I apologize for the deception." "But it was the optimal way to bring the church down," Aegon replied. "The optimal way to bring the church down, and the best way to make you the biggest winner, right?" Snow sighed, annoyed. Snow was beginning to understand the prince better and better, now able to glimpse a piece of the real power that made Aegon so consequential on the board. "Where are the war angels?" Fry asked this time. The church had possessed 2 war angels at SS+, both of which now belonged to Aegon. They're under Bishop Khaleesi's control. "He is, of course, wholly loyal to me," Aegon answered without hiding a thing. "In other words, they're under your control," Fry said, a dry laugh slipping free. At day's end, Aegon had acquired 3 SS+ class weapons, 2 war angels, and the turncoat bishop. The finale hadn't gone exactly to plan thanks to Bladier, but overall, he was the greatest beneficiary. "Those angels are the crystallization of thousands of lives sacrificed," Uriel said, remembering how Bladier had seized them. "Weapons that should never have existed. The path of sacrifice. It had nothing to do with the Lord of Light. How the church had laid hands on it remained a mystery. From now on, these weapons will be harnessed for the Empire. I'd say that's the most fitting use." Aegon smiled, eyes closed. Silence held for a few seconds. "A crushing victory for our side. Then, yes?" Fry asked with a smile. Aegon nodded. "Correct. We've won. And all that remains is to crush the Ultras and end the war." Aegon's gaze slid over the 3 before him, his mind working as always to ferret out the truth behind them. He wanted to know what had happened the moment he'd left. But he knew these 3 would never tell him. No hurry. There were many ways to reach the truth. That was his specialty. Once the 4 were together, Snow gave Fry a nod to teleport them back to Imperial forces. He had no desire to deal with the prince any longer. But Fry didn't move. He stood there, head bowed, looking at his clenched fist. "Crushing the Ultras and ending the war. That would be a lovely ending," he murmured. "Unfortunately, the Ultras aren't our only enemies." Slowly, the air around Fry seemed to change. Slower, heavier. "Our enemies are everywhere. Lurking in the shadows, watching from every side, waiting to strip us of everything we hold dear. The church was only the beginning. What's coming is far worse." He lifted his face to the sun blazing over their world, eyes narrowing by degrees. "The Ultras, the demons, and many more. They're all our enemies." Aegon nodded. "You're right. The game will only get harder, which means we'll have to play better. Won't we?" the prince said, playing along with Fry. "That's right," Fry answered. "Because we won't win." He paused. A baleful gleam flared in his eyes, a chill racing the spines of everyone present. "Until every last one of our enemies is dead." Slash! None of them understood what had happened until it was too late. They grasped the truth only when the blood fountained. And that dreadful black blade flashed into view. Balerion, the Black Terror. With a single stroke carrying all of Fry Starlight's might, he severed Aegon's neck at a speed beyond comprehension. The prince's head spun away through the air as his body toppled, slowly, into its own spreading blood. "Ha!" was all that slipped from Aegon's lips before his head rolled across the ground, painting a thin red line. Felt unreal, impossible. Fry stood there, staring down at Aegon's corpse, undisguised contempt dark in his eyes. As for Snow Lionheart and Uriel, both froze, unable to process what had just happened. Stunned, Snow opened his mouth and asked, Fry, what did you do? Something I should have done a long time ago, Fry answered at once. Turning away, leaving the prince's corpse behind him, Fry came back to the other two. Let's leave this place. Ignoring their looks, Fry sank inward, preparing to trigger his teleportation. In those brief seconds, his eyes fell on a line on his system interface. Current achievement points, 0. I'm tired. Remembering everything from the start of the war, Fry felt exhausted. Not in body, but in spirit. In that fleeting moment, memories flashed. Things he had buried deep, and the reason he had refused to use the system's powers during the war. Glimpse of the future. As his enemies multiplied and the war grew more vicious than ever, outcomes became uncertain. The chance of defeat rose. Unable to shake the dread of what lay ahead, he had used that power again and again, trying to see where the war would end. The glimpse had shown him dozens of scenarios already. He'd used it so often his achievement points had run dry. But no matter how he tried, no matter what he changed, the glimpse showed only one ending. At the end of the war, far ahead in the future, he saw a sea of corpses, a place where death had spread and life had been stripped away. Bodies of the Empire's warriors. Every last one of them, all dead. Every time standing there he understood. We lost. Every time, they lost. And what made it worse was that he could never discern exactly how they lost. So Fry had tried to change the future again and again, but whatever the scenario, the result never shifted. I'm tired. He was tired of the visions he'd seen, unaware that using that ability so often had side effects on those around him as well, making them catch fleeting glimpses of their distant futures. Pushed to his limit by all he had seen, Fry chose to play rough this time, to face everything head-on, and the first step was that damned prince. The end is close. There's no room left to retreat. Either they won and escaped the fate set for them, or they lost, and were dragged along by the dark current of destiny toward ruin. Taking hold of both Snow and Uriel, Fry prepared to return and plunge into the final act of the War of Darkness. The chapter that would end the conflict between the Empire and the Ultras once and for all. Far from Fry and the others, high in the sky, sitting quietly in the center of a vast crater of devastation, Geppetto exhaled. That saint surpassed my expectations. Who would have thought she'd go so far? Burning her body, destroying it completely, just to keep me from taking her. He sounded annoyed, and that was all. As expected, he had won. The saint was dead. But the end hadn't been what he wanted. The island had become a mass of ruin, their battle a natural disaster. She would have made a splendid addition to my collection, but it doesn't matter now. Floating slowly away from the island, which had already begun to fall, Geppetto left once his task was done. I wonder how Zebar is doing. The battle raging in the shadows had reached its own peak. It wouldn't be long before everything was dragged into the light. Between humans and demons, a bitter struggle awaited. And only the future would answer who would stand victorious in the end. The first half of the War of Darkness had ended, and the Church was the first to fall. Resetting the war to where it began, Empire versus Ultras. The Church had been an entirely unforeseen variable, wielding colossal weapons that could have tipped the conflict decisively in its favor. But its fall was swift and brutal. It took only 3 Imperial fighters to bring it down. What the world at large didn't know, however, was that the battle on Noctera had far surpassed imagination. The dead were counted in the millions. The highest toll yet. Powers that had lurked in the shadows began to step forward, one after another, and the rate at which the balance of power climbed was becoming alarmingly dangerous. Leora, the Saint of Dawn, was the first to fall after Geppetto's sudden appearance. He had been actively hunting those like her, figures who had hidden themselves in the dark. And this was only the beginning of the tragedy. Just as the world turned upside down on the sacred island of Noctera, another event shook the world elsewhere at that very moment, there in the eastern Nightmare Lands. In the cleared zone, Fry Starlight had scoured after annihilating most of the nightmare creatures that dwelled there. The place was quiet and desolate, especially that ancient sect whose size had swelled into a great city, its walls built of jet-black stone of tremendous hardness. The shadow sect was calm as ever, its ramparts standing proud against anything that dared approach. But the enemy did not come from the earth. He came from the sky. Under the wing of night he descended slowly. A cursed creature whose mere appearance would breed nightmares in anyone who saw him. His skin was black and blistered, his eyes a deep, drowned violet. A pair of long horns crowned his head, and a long black cloak billowed behind his back. In parallel with the events on the sacred island, the shadow sect received a heavy guest who intended to knock upon its door and unveil what its walls concealed. Rank 10, the one-man army Zebar. His eyes swept over the entire sect with idle curiosity before settling on the tall walls rising before him. There, an old man in black Saturday, his eyes closed, scored by deep scars. A blind elder, calm even beneath the insane pressure pouring from Zebar. Zebar narrowed his eyes, recognizing the elder before him. I came here expecting many variables, but I never accounted for you being one of them, Zebar said, a mocking smile tugging at his lips. Aren't you the fool who once dared call himself the sword god? Only to end up as nothing but a toy in Weskir's hands. The more he looked at the withered elder, the wider Zebar's smile grew. What's the matter, Avalon? Haven't you been hiding all these years? Afraid of the likes of me? Or did you finally muster the courage to stand before me and die? With a pressure that made earth and sky quake, Zebar's voice rose beside the ears of the blind Avalon. Answer me, Avalon, Zebar roared, threatening, as Avalon lifted his head toward him, staring with the empty hollows where his eyes had been. Then, without warning, the old man unleashed all his strength, shaping a pure white sword from the aura of light. His greatest blade of all, Kalinal. I've lived my whole life eaten away by fear, and I'm still afraid even now. I know I'm not your equal, demon. Between light and darkness, there was a clear divide. Avalon had reached stage 2 of SSS. Pulse of Chaos. This stage brought a violent surge of power that slipped free of control and turned utterly chaotic. It granted many and varied abilities to those who reached it, but in exchange it was a brutally difficult level. Surpassing it required mastering that chaos completely. Avalon had been stuck there for many years, and he knew it was his limit. Zebar, however, had surpassed it long ago. The peak of Stage 3. Origin Revelation. Correct, Zebar said with a smile. That's the level this incarnation reflects. His words, and the pressure radiating from him, removed all doubt. This copy present on Earth represented at least 80% of the original's power. That much was now obvious. Avalon understood that the one before him was no ordinary foe, but the bearer of one of Agarotha's 6 souls. That alone placed Zebar at the summit of power. Tell me, Zebar asked, advancing slowly. How would you like to die, Avalon? He spoke with scorn. Zebar fully intended to kill Avalon, even if the latter was one of Weskir's playthings. The old man weathered the demon's pressure without moving an inch. You can answer that yourself, he said. You're the one who dies today, damned demon. Letting out a feral howl, Avalon erased the distance in a single step and loosed a thunderous slash aimed at the demon's neck. Kalinal was swift and terrifying. In mere heartbeats it struck, detonating with a blast that shook the void. But the blade never reached Zebar's throat. He caught it with one hand. Pathetic, Zebar sneered, thrusting his free hand toward Avalon. But Avalon instantly warped the aura of light, forming thousands of colossal swords around them. Swords that hurtled forth to engulf them both. Zebar unfurled a dark halo around his body at once, and the blades shattered one after another like glass the instant they touched him. Is that all you've got? Zebar sounded irritated this time. Avalon's colossal strike had done nothing but blind him with light, but that was exactly what the old man had banked on. Now! Avalon's shout rang wide, and from behind that vast curtain of light, Zebar felt it coming. Guarding with his free hand, He received the colossal scythe that struck him out of nowhere. The momentum of the blow sent the demon hurtling, smashing him toward the ground before he rebounded across it, carving a trail of devastation behind him. Staring up, Zebar's eyes fixed on the wrath-faced statue that had appeared from nothing to attack him. A black statue. This drags up unpleasant memories I thought I buried long ago, Zebar said with a smile, then slammed the ground beneath him and lunged toward Angry. Let's see how sturdy your craftsmanship is. Gathering a terrifying quantity of aura around his fist, Zebar threw a ruinous punch at Angry. Too fast for his opponent to react. But at the last instant, Zebar halted and moved his hands with deft precision to parry what came from right and left. On his right stood a strange man wielding a spear. On his left, a cursed, hunched old man with a sword. Their weapons ground violently against Zebar's fists. He held them off with skill, only to be slammed a heartbeat later by a coordinated assault from Angry and Avalon, forcing him to give ground. 4-against-1. Funny that I, of all people, should be outnumbered. Zebar laughed, unfazed by the arrival of more enemies. He didn't finish laughing before a roaring black arrow plunged from the sky, exploding against him and everything beneath. Zebar recoiled instantly, catching the arrow in his left hand after deflecting it, only to be met by dozens more, screaming toward him from every direction. Ha! Mouth opening, Zebar unleashed a torrent of aura that swallowed the arrows and ground them to dust. And the moment he did, the ground vanished beneath him as the maw of a colossal beast, hundreds of meters across at least, erupted upward. It threatened to swallow him whole, a thing wrought entirely of pure aura. Flinging the arrow from his hand, Zebar wrapped his fist in dark aura and obliterated the beast below him, the detonation slamming against the Shadow Sect's walls as a curtain of mist billowed out, veiling everything around them. Seconds later, a hoarse, menacing laugh spread through the smoke as Zebar stepped out slowly from behind the drifting shroud. Ha! 6-against-1? Have mercy on me. Dusting his cloak, Zebar smiled as he looked over his new hosts. Wave controller. Looks like a mere child who hasn't even come of age, which only proves absolute control. Impressive. The one behind that sweeping, crushing attack was just a blonde boy in a hood. He had taken position behind the others, ready to strike at any moment. Farther back still stood a dark-skinned woman bearing a great bow, the source of those terrifying arrows. 2 duelists, a tank, a spearman, a wave controller, and an archer. All of them were SSS tier. It was a terrifying formation, but Zebar kept probing for whatever lay hidden beyond them. Where is your leader? I don't see him among you, Zebar asked, as the spearman advanced with Angry at his side. There's no need for him. You're not leaving this place alive. I see, Zebar said, then opened his mouth again in their faces. Show me what you've got. Boom! Spewing a roaring beam that tore the void ahead of him, Zebar blasted both the spearman and Angry back at once, then surged toward the rest. In mere seconds he crashed into Avalon and the other duelist, trading blows at the speed of light. All the while, his body absorbed hundreds of arrows that shattered one after another against him. They came from everywhere, skimming past Avalon and the other duelist by a hair's breadth. And that wasn't all. Every shot was placed with perfect precision on vital points. What a terrifying archer, Zebar muttered as he snapped into a rapid retreat. The sky had lit with a strange, deep blue, and rains of aura were cascading down on him. The wave controller was relentless, targeting every opening the demon showed. Boom! Assaulted from all sides, Zebar evaded everything as 4 fighters hounded him at once while 2 more attacked from afar. They're beneath me in raw power, but they're closing the gap through coordination. Forced into a high-tempo fight across multiple fronts, Zebar cranked his aura output to the maximum, unleashing thousands of strikes in seconds as he tried to break the encirclement. But the attempt failed. Angry blocked him in tandem with the spearman, while the 2 duelists pressed him head-on. Their coordination was terrifyingly flawless. They left no openings at all. Bearing that insane pressure, Zebar's smile only widened with every blow he took. Entertaining enemies. The flow of battle was entirely against Zebar. Yet the demon didn't seem bothered in the least, as if his current situation meant nothing to him. What stood there was only a copy. A tremendously powerful copy, but a copy all the same. When he found himself surrounded, Zebar's body flared with a strange radiance and his eyes lit up. Shall we tip the scales a little? Spreading both arms wide, Zebar unleashed a baleful pressure that froze everyone around him in place. This is the soul of reincarnation. Before their eyes, one of the world-breaking abilities appeared in full. There are only 6 souls in existence, and the cursed Agarath happens to possess them all. The Demon King was a true enigma, for he also wielded an extra, world-breaking gift that let him share his powers with whomever he wished, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Zebar was one of the hosts of that immense might. In a single instant, where there had been 1, there were 3, and the tide flipped completely. 3 copies, each carrying 50% of the original's power. Though his individual strength had dropped, turning the fight into 6-on-3 let Zebar break the encirclement. Instead of facing 6 at once, each copy only needed to handle 2. Even if my power falls to 50%, that applies only to my aura output, which means the force I can wield still sits within Origin Revelation. Boom! I am one of the top 10 ranks. What made you think you could pen me of all people in? Zebar laughed loud, turning the battlefield into hell. But despite the unprecedented blast, his enemies withstood him savagely, barely shaken by what he'd done. As if they'd expected it. Zebar was a true monster. Physicality and hardness beyond imagination, with power and strikes that could butcher the likes of Bladder with ease. Yet those 6 endured everything he hurled at them, fighting in silence without a single wasted word. Their coordination, the way they moved, it was as if one mind was fighting, piloting all their bodies. The battle's 6-on-3, and I still can't seize the advantage. Zebar's thoughts raced as he sought to break them. At first he targeted the archer and the wave controller, but they turned him back, especially the bowbearer. She was just as lethal up close as she was from afar. Just who exactly are those 4? He scanned their faces. He recognized Avalon and Angry, but the other 4 were a mystery. I can't deploy more copies above 50%. My original body, along with another at 80%, is already roaming the world. From the start, this demon had been only a copy. True, he hadn't overturned the tide against his foes, but they, in turn, had failed to crack his defense. The fight was perfectly even, the outcome opaque. Every possibility still on the table. Relishing the battle, Zebar cut his thoughts short. No point overthinking. Let's smash each other with everything we've got, and see who's left standing. Meeting them head-to-head, Zebar made the 6 feel the terror of the top 10 demons, who hadn't budged from their thrones in thousands of years. If a mere copy could hold off 6 SSS tier fighters, what would happen if the real one came? The thought alone was a nightmare. Let alone its realization. Before the Shadow Sect, a battle shook the entire continent and drew a new ceiling for power upon the earth. Whether for the human side, or for Zebar, the victor would undoubtedly reshape the War of Darkness from this moment on. Far from the Eastern Nightmare Lands, back on the Ultras continent, there raged the war everyone knew, far from what had transpired in the shadows. There, specifically where the Empire's forces were positioned, the field flashed violet as 3 figures appeared from nowhere, returning to the main battlefield. On that day, Fry and Snow finally returned to rejoin their comrades, having toppled the church and completed their mission successfully. On the Ultras continent, the stage that held the war's front line and the fiercest clash between the Empire and their eternal enemy. 3 figures appeared out of nowhere near the encampments the Empire had made their base. Fry Starlight set foot upon that dead land after an absence of several days, though it had felt far longer for him. And for the others who'd been forced to face the church and everything it hid behind its faith. We've been gone a while, I wonder what things look like here, Snow asked, face bleak, as he took his first step toward the Allied camp. We'll face a harsh backlash, most likely. Since the prince is no longer with us, Uriel said, eyes on Frey's back as he walked ahead with an expressionless face. He had killed Aegon out of nowhere, catching them completely off guard. They had never expected him to do such a thing. Aegon had always been a filthy schemer, weaving his tricks in the dark and swaying those around him for ill or for good. But at the very least, he had fought on their side in this war. Snow had thought that would be reason enough for Frey to spare him. And the prince had seemed to have something up his sleeve that had stayed Frey's hand. We no longer have time to waste. The war is entering its final phase, and there's no point keeping the likes of Aegon around. From here on, you and I will end this war, Snow, and we'll crush anyone who stands in the way, Frey said, turning to Uriel. The fighting will be harsher than ever, and the death toll will far exceed the previous battles. With these hands, I'll kill the Ultras, slaughter them to the very last. At the mere mention of what he was about to do, certain memories flashed through Uriel's mind. Back to the days she marched with Frey at the vanguard of the war. How the corpses piled into mountains and the blood ran in rivers. It was a sight she would never forget for as long as she lived. And here was Frey telling her he was ready to go even further. We're not heroes. We're soldiers now. Our job is to win this war. Our hands will be stained one way or another, and that may be too much for you. But if you're still willing to walk with us regardless, your help would be a great gain for us, Uriel. Frey pressed Uriel to decide. And she did not hesitate long. My hands are far dirtier than yours, Frey. I'm the one who, one way or another, caused the deaths of millions. So don't worry. I set my feet on the blood path a long time ago. Uriel spoke and Frey nodded. Good. With their resolve settled, the three made for the camp. As they drew near, the sentries spotted them, and word of their arrival spread quickly through the ranks. Frey and his companions found a large number of soldiers waiting, eyes upon them with every kind of look, faces reflecting a storm of feeling. Some were grateful. These were the heroes who had put an end to the church and its designs. But they could not properly celebrate, not with the number of lives the confrontation had cost. Most of those present had lost at least one person dear to them, yet overall, awe was plain upon their faces, as if they were looking at some kind of legends walking on 2 feet. Even so, that didn't stop many from stepping forward to thank Frey and the others. Foremost among them Phoenix Sunlight, who had recovered much of his luster and vigor after the battle against the demons and the Angel of War. Approaching them, he greeted them with a gentle smile. Welcome back, Phoenix, Frey muttered, scanning the camp around him. He realized at once that the soldiers were far fewer than the last time he'd seen them, and he couldn't sense the presence of those close to him like Sansa and Ghost. What happened here? He asked, and Phoenix shook his head. Let's join the others first. We've been waiting for you to arrive. We've been waiting for us? Snow Lionheart echoed, puzzled. It seemed Phoenix had expected them, and the soldiers' reactions didn't look surprised at all. But Snow didn't dwell on it. He simply followed Phoenix and his group as the two led the way. That was a hard battle you were forced to endure, Phoenix said. I'm glad you all made it back alive. Frey nodded. We won. And that's all that matters. But the war isn't over. You're not wrong, Phoenix agreed. The Ultras began launching assault after assault the moment you left. As a result, we've been fighting without pause ever since. With an irritated sigh, Phoenix sketched the present situation in brief as they walked. The fighting is still ongoing. We just received word that Oliver Khan's squad clashed with one of the Hollows. Oliver Khan's squad, Frey whispered. That was likely the unit Sansa was with. Slowly, Frey's eyes darkened as he opened the third-person player perspective to check on her. Should I go to them? Frey thought, ready to head out and join the battle in earnest. His intent was plain to those around him, and Phoenix hurried to dissuade him. Do you really mean to plunge back into the war the instant you return, Frey? Take a rest. Even you need it. Fry shook his head. I don't need rest. I'm in my best condition. He was stubborn enough to make Phoenix chuckle despite himself. You claim you're fine even after fighting an SSS tier warrior. Just how much power do you have, Fry? Phoenix said with a dry, weighty laugh. But at those words, phrase, and the others' faces darkened. An SSS tier warrior. Phoenix, how do you know we fought an opponent like that? Fry asked, the question that had been gnawing at him finally taking shape as he began to realize just how strange the situation had become. Likewise, Snow and Uriel did the same. The way they were waiting for us, as if they'd expected our arrival from the start. And now Phoenix is talking about Bladier, Snow said, standing beside Uriel. It was strange indeed. Phoenix, or anyone in the Empire's camp, shouldn't have known what had happened. There'd been no way to contact them. For him to know about Bladder's breakthrough into SSS tier was certainly suspicious. Phoenix, for his part, tilted his head, equally puzzled by their reaction. What are you talking about? We're fully aware of what happened to you on the Sacred Island. You told us yourselves. Phoenix's words only deepened Frey's confusion and distrust. You're telling me you know everything? In those scant moments, dozens of possibilities raced through Frey's mind. Had Aegon informed the Empire when he fled? Or was it Callistus who left the island before them? All were possible. But Fry didn't believe any of them for some reason. By the time they reached the command tent the Empire had taken as headquarters, a certain line Phoenix had spoken began to ring in both Frey's and Snow's minds at once. Phoenix, you said earlier you were glad to see all of us make it back alive. Fry said, his tone heavy. Snow understood what he meant. All of them alive? That wasn't true at all. One person was missing. Someone who hadn't returned with them, whose corpse had been left to rot on the Sacred Island even as they spoke. In that weighty instant, they both arrived at the same question. Why hadn't anyone asked them about Aegon Valyrian? Coming back without the prince should have raised every alarm. It should have been the first thing Phoenix asked. But he hadn't. He'd been calm, genuinely pleased to see them. And he seemed to know far too much about their clash with the church. Who exactly told you what happened? The moment Fry asked the question, time itself seemed to stop, drawing back the flap and revealing the inside of the Empire's command tent. Phoenix pointed to the truth, frowning at how astonished Fry and the others were. What are you getting at, Fry? The one who informed us was. The moment the door opened, faces Fry had already sensed came into view. Seated in scattered places were all the Empire's great names. Sir Alone Valyrian and even Mikar Valyrian had returned. Ivar and his brother Luke and Iris Sunlight as well. They were all there, but one more person sat among them. And it was the man whose presence shocked Fry, Snow, and Uriel as if they'd seen a ghost. Sitting with one leg crossed over the other, leaning calmly on an arm braced on the chair, he smiled in greeting. Of course. The prince is the one who told us what happened to you, Phoenix said, gesturing to Aegon. The prince sat there, quiet, wearing his usual smile, as if he were savoring their reaction. We were genuinely surprised when the prince returned alone a few days ago, Phoenix said with a smile. But he informed us of your victory and what transpired, and thanks to that we understood the situation and could act accordingly. His smile faded quickly as murderous intent flooded the tent. Most present tensed. The eyes of Sir Alone and Mikar flared with a dangerous light. All of it in answer to the suffocating killing intent pouring from Fry Starlight. You? Why the hell are you here? Fry asked, face black with fury, cold sweat breaking across those S-rank and below. The prince didn't so much as flinch. Why am I here? Where else would I be? He replied with confidence, reclining in his chair. I judged I no longer had a place among you there, so I returned ahead of you. I hope you don't mind. Fry. At those words, a terrifying violet light flashed in Frey's eyes as his thoughts raced. How? When? Why is the damned prince still alive? Was the one he killed before just a copy? No, impossible. Fry rejected the notion at once. The prince he'd slain with his own hands had been the real one who'd accompanied them the entire time. Aegon couldn't create such a perfect copy. Unless he possessed something like Zebar's soul of reincarnation, which in Aegon's case was impossible. So how had the prince survived? And was the man before him truly Aegon Valyrian? Fry couldn't sense him at all, even though he could feel the likes of Sir Alone and Mikar Valyrian. "Who are you?" Fry asked, voice leaden, tension flooding the room as everyone edged away from one another. "You chose to play rough, Fry. So don't blame me when my hand slips and reveals horrors you're not ready to endure." "I see," Fry answered coolly, silence hanging for a heartbeat. In the very next, a devastating aura exploded from his body as he drew both his swords. A colossal pressure shook the ground beneath him, and the prince sprang back at once. Fry moved to pounce, but halted when he was completely boxed in from both sides. A terrifying fiery spear thrust in from his right, while a pure white blade flashed up from his left. In the same instant, Sir Alone Valyrian and Mikar Valyrian hemmed him in, their weapons poised at his throat. "Do not take another step, Fry Starlight," Sir Alone warned, his voice iron. "What you're attempting now is direct rebellion against the ruling house and its next emperor. In other words, you are raising your weapon against the entire empire." His words rang through the tent, and Mikar affirmed his father's decree. "Stand down, Fry Starlight, and sheathe your blades." Steel at his neck, both men ready to strike, the pressure they exerted was no small thing. Fry was unmoved. "Do you truly believe you can stop me? I'm not the weak youth you could toy with anymore." Boom! With a single stroke, Fry knocked aside both Mikar's and Sir Alone's weapons, forcing them back. In response, Ivar Valyrian and Iris Sunlight closed in to flank him. They didn't want to kill him, but they were certainly not on his side. One glance told Fry that Aegon had done something during their absence. "When are you going to stop hiding behind other people's backs, Aegon? If these fools are the ones you're relying on, you should know better than anyone that I can cut through them with ease." At Frey's threat, Aegon simply nodded. "I'm perfectly aware. You're the monster who stood against SSS tier fighters, after all." Whatever he said, Aegon didn't seem rattled by being singled out. "You're strong, Fry. But are you ready to make the entire empire your enemy just to kill me?" As he spoke, the command tent tore open, revealing a staggering number of troops encircling the place. It could be said that every Imperial soldier present had converged to pen them in, ready for battle. Casting a look over their faces and letting his aura spread, Fry finally understood. Among those gathered, not a single person stood on Fry Starlight's side. All his allies and friends, along with the soldiers who admired him and had sworn to fight for his sake, had been driven off to join the ongoing battle outside while this meeting took place. Surrounded on all sides, it felt like a carefully laid trap, prepared by Aegon Valyrian from the very start, awaiting their return. And it only cemented Frey's certainty that the prince before him was not the human he knew, but something far beyond. "What now, Fry? Will you raise your sword and butcher the very people you've been fighting for?" Aegon walked slowly, drawing close to his grandfather and father. "You're very strong. It's possible you could kill everyone here, but what would be left to you afterward? The demons are your enemies. The ultras are your enemies. The church and its followers are your enemies. Will you make the empire itself your enemy now?" Aegon worked Frey's nerves, laying out the board. "You can kill those present, but you will never kill me, Fry. I'm like an idea living in every citizen of this empire. Wherever you go, you'll find people loyal to me, ready to fight for me. That is the result of what I've built for years while you floundered in your miserable life." The message beneath his words was clear. "You cannot kill me," as if he were telling him that even if Fry killed him again now, Aegon would reappear sooner or later. And in the meantime, the entire empire would become his enemy. For Fry Starlight, who had fought multiple fronts at once and borne insane pressures no sane man could endure, was making the empire his enemy as well truly the right choice. That was the nerve Aegon pressed, the wedge he tried to drive into Fry. Fry stood alone against the whole empire. He had the power to face them by himself. But choosing to do so was another matter. If he did, he would have no place left in this world to return to. And whether he could kill Aegon at all was in doubt to begin with. And then, amid that crushing tension, a second young man stepped up beside Fry. Exerting a terrifying pressure to rival Frey's own, Snow Lionheart took his place at his friend's side, his body blazing with a fierce golden runic glow. "You're mistaken, Aegon. He isn't alone." Raising Vermithor, Snow showed he was ready to fight. "Between you and the empire you're trying to build and Fry Starlight, I'll take his side without a shred of hesitation." Likewise, Uriel stepped forward to stand behind them both. Aegon nodded, as if he'd expected exactly that. "The Church's hero, shame your presence doesn't carry the same weight anymore. The Lord of Light who chose you is cursed by mankind now as much as the demons." To the world, it appeared that the Lord of Light had caused the catastrophe of 35 million sacrifices. The orders seemed to have come from him. Aegon had made no effort to correct that. He exploited it to the fullest. Clearly, he had no intention of winning a straight fight against Fry Starlight. His aim was to strip Fry of the place he called home. If Fry fought here, the Empire would turn on him. And if he didn't, the prince would simply carry on, exploiting Frey's presence in the war. He seemed confident that Fry wouldn't be able to kill him, so either outcome amounted to a win for him. At different costs, what he truly wanted was to see which choice Fry would make. To fight and start a massacre. Or to retreat, grinding his teeth. "That's enough, all of you. We're on the same side. There's no point in fighting each other. Even if Fry is dangerous, I want to believe in him, and in the necessity of his presence." Standing between them, Phoenix Sunlight stepped in, making clear his wish to defuse things as peacefully as possible. On the other side, Snow stood before Fry, shielding him. "Fry, let's fall back for now," he said, turning to his friend. He'd shown he was ready to fight for Fry, but he didn't want to kill Imperial soldiers if it could be helped. And he believed Fry felt the same. After all, both of them were fighting for the Empire first and foremost. But Snow froze when a single look at Frey's face told him a terrifying truth about the man standing before him. "Fry, you!" Shocked by what Fry was about to do, Snow lunged, gripping his shoulder. "Fry, come to your senses." Fry said nothing. He turned his head to the right. Dozens of soldiers stared back at him with all kinds of eyes. He turned left. More of them with the same expressions. Some of them feared him. Some of them saw him as a monster to be used. A killing machine, a weapon of war, a tool to slay their enemies. A tool drenched in blood, whose purpose was to win the war for them, and then be tossed aside once they had what they wanted. This was the mindset of those Aegon had deliberately kept here for this very purpose. In that moment, Fry wondered, would I feel anything if I killed them all? He wondered it honestly. The soldiers, Sir Alone, Mikar, Ivar, Iris, whatever their strength, whatever their necessity to the war. Fry asked himself whether he needed any of them. From the start, I've had nothing to rely on but my own strength. Power decides everything. His emotions were the only thing making him hesitate. But in this decisive instant, Fry found his feelings toward them completely numb, realizing he wouldn't be affected at all even if he butchered every last one. If I slaughter every soldier of the Empire, and then the Ultras after them. The blood path will grant me immense power. Power enough to set my feet on a wholly different plane. Enough to stand against the mightiest demons. What's the point of fighting for the Empire? What's the point of sparing their lives? In any case, the number of people who mattered to him was small. And none of them were among this crowd. Maybe they'd hate him if he did it. Maybe they'd turn on him. Fry saw no problem with that. So long as I can gain the power I seek, casting aside these feelings is a paltry price to pay. He said this, gripping his swords and taking his first step toward Aegon and the Imperial soldiers. Staring at him, Snow understood that his friend truly intended to make the entire world his enemy. without a shred of hesitation. Realizing the scale of the danger, Snow pleaded for Fry to stop. If a monster of Frey's caliber went off the leash now, the dead would number beyond counting, and that only deepened Aegon's laughter across the way. Fry didn't care. In those brief heartbeats, he remembered a certain presence he had seen in his visions. Nameless, that strange being who had weighed so heavily upon his life. That great warrior had always stood alone, steeped in solitude. He forged no bonds, relied on no one. He built his strength himself and achieved what none before him had. And nearly defeated Agarath, the Demon King. That was the kind of power Fry Starlight sought. And if butchering Imperial soldiers was the key, he found himself unexpectedly ready to pay the price. Like that, Fry prepared to fight. But at the last instant, he halted as a slender hand cracked across his face, snapping his head aside. The slap rang out through the tent, and Snow blinked to see someone else standing in Frey's way. Stunned, Fry slowly turned toward her. Uriel stood before him, a complicated expression on her face, her hands still gleaming with halo light after the blow. "That's enough, Fry." She pulled him into a fierce embrace. Her body blazed with intense golden light, and the golden aura formed around her, taking the shape of 6 wings that burst from her back. Gathering her power, she shaped countless golden chains that coiled around them both, binding Fry to her, then stretched out to snare Snow as well. Without warning, she blasted the ground beneath her and took to the sky. She was fast, but Sir Alone and Mikar moved at once to stop her. And in moments they were upon her, only to recoil as Snow repelled them with a fearsome wave of light, hurling them back. Snow backed Uriel immediately, and together they bore Fry away. Before he could cause a disaster. From a distance, Aegon watched them go, his smile deepening. "So it wasn't your feelings that stopped you this time, but your friends," Aegon said lightly, closing his eyes as he stepped back. "It's time to set the stage for the final act." After returning from the sacred island, Fry was stunned to see his counterpart, Prince Aegon Valyrian, alive and well. He had thought he'd killed him. Finished it. Instead, Fry found that Aegon would remain a thorn in his side for longer yet. Their struggle had been written to continue, and no one knew where it would lead. Cornered and forced to decide, Fry had been a breath away from doing the unthinkable. Killing all those people to bring the prince down. Showing his full readiness to sacrifice them and feed the blood path with their souls. It would have been a point of no return. But Uriel's last-second intervention prevented it. Clinging to him, binding him with her chains, Uriel carried him into the sky while Snow followed, keeping them away from where Aegon and the others stood. The prince had managed to draw most of the Empire's main strength to his side, and to turn them against Fry. In many eyes, Fry was nothing but a bloodthirsty monster, more monster than hero. And the way he fought only reinforced that belief. In the end, Fry was saved, not from his enemies, not from Aegon, from himself. He was spared from making that dark choice. And he owed it to his friends. Resting against Uriel's chest, Fry looked at her for a while before closing his eyes, a wry smile tracing his lips. "No need to hold me so tight. I'm not going anywhere," he said calmly, trying to make Uriel release him. She refused. "Impossible. I won't let go until we're far enough away." "And just how far is far enough?" Fry asked, laughing. "As far as it takes." Uriel shot back, flustered. She flew in front with Fry, while Snow trailed behind to ensure no one ambushed them. He was terrifyingly strong now. After opening his path, fending off the likes of Mikar and Sir Alone had become possible for him. Thanks to that, Uriel and Fry could pull away cleanly. Once they had put real distance behind them, the oppressive haze around Fry lightened. Some of the killing intent he had poured at Aegon finally ebbing. Even so, the tension never left Uriel. "We could just use my teleportation ability instead of all this aimless flying, you know," Fry said. Uriel shook her head. "You might use it to go back there and start a fight. So no. Your logic's strange. If I truly wanted to fight, you wouldn't have been able to stop me in the first place." And you know it, Fry answered with a soft laugh. Uriel scowled. I don't know what I should do, Fry. I really don't. As they flew in uneasy quiet, Uriel admitted what was on her mind. You really meant to kill all those people, I'm sure of it. Your face then, it was the same one I saw when you butchered those terrifying numbers of ultras. That version of you, it frightens me. Listening, Fry narrowed his eyes, remembering the mountains of corpses he himself had made while following the blood path. You've always walked in darkness. From the start, it's been there in you. By degrees. And even with that dark nature, you were still the Fry I knew. The same fractured soul that fights again and again to survive, bearing every kind of pain. No matter what happened or what your hands did, you didn't change. You remained that same person, that same striver. But this time, had you really done it there? Fry, I felt it for the first time. Bitterly, Uriel voiced what she had sensed in those scant moments when Fry nearly crossed the line. I felt I would lose you. If you'd done it, you wouldn't have been the same person anymore. People's choices decide their fate. And how the world sees them. For Fry, who was ready to sacrifice so much to gain power, perhaps this sacrifice would have gone far beyond the bounds, turning him into another kind of monster. The very monster Leora, the Saint of Dawn, had warned her about. Hearing Uriel's words, Fry wasn't surprised by her line of thought. He had expected such a reaction from the start. To be honest, I've always found the idea of death comforting, even delightful. Thinking my life could end at any moment, it brought with it a sense of freedom I'd always lacked. Freedom from the horrors and terrors this life kept throwing at me. But since I didn't die, I'm forced to face those horrors and pass through them. To do that, I need to sacrifice a lot, and of the many things I've given up so far, few remain. And I am one of those few. As the two descended slowly from the sky and set down on the slope of a distant hill, Fry smiled at Uriel and opened his heart. As you can see, Uriel, I don't mind. I don't mind sacrificing myself. Or losing my humanity and the image you all hold of me. I don't mind so long as I achieve my aim. So long as I win in the end. Nothing else matters. Hearing that, Uriel remembered fragments of the visions that had haunted her in the past. Visions of a future where Fry appeared in a form she had never imagined. An image of a cold monster marching over a horrifying number of corpses, paving his way with fire and blood. Perhaps the Fry before her now reflected the seeds that would lead to that dark image she feared. If he kept walking the path he'd chosen, he would reach that future sooner or later. And what kind of future would that be? Fry did look truly powerful in that future self. But at what price? He had shown complete readiness to do whatever it took to gain power. If the price turned out to be the lives of those around him, her life or Snow's or anyone dear to him, would Fry pay it? Would he hesitate? The Fry of now did not seem like someone who would make that choice. But if the slaughter continued and his enemies grew stronger, it would only be a matter of time before he lost the last thing holding him back. To become a lone monster of overwhelming power, but alone with no one. I don't want that kind of future for you, Uriel said. Fry shook his head. Then you shouldn't stay near me. I'm not the hero you should be supporting. He stepped back to put distance between them. But Uriel caught his face at once, stopping him from slipping away. Erasing the space between them, she stole a deep kiss he never expected, throwing her weight into it. It wasn't the first time Fry had kissed a girl, but Uriel's lips carried a different taste. And with that act she made her stance clear without words. In those brief moments, Uriel remembered Leora's warning. When the Saint of Dawn had told her to stay away from Fry. But Uriel had never intended to abide by that warning. She had already chosen the one she wanted to walk beside, settling a decision she had wavered on her whole life. Pulling back slowly, she lowered her head, hiding her flushed face, while Fry stared at her, surprise still plain on his. Uriel. Sorry, but this is all I can offer you in my state, Uriel blurted. I might not be able to stop you like I did today next time, but at the very least I'll be there. Maybe my presence will help you hold on to yourself, even a little. I still lack the strength to make a real impact on the battlefield, but I'll work many times harder to narrow the gap, even a little. So, please let me stay with you, to the very end. Hearing her out, Fry realized Uriel had made her choice, intent on staying by his side, to be his saint. He could only wonder whether it was the right choice for her to make. Before he could say anything, a third figure dropped onto the hill, cloaked in a light of pure gold. Approaching, Snow looked at them for a beat, sensing the odd air between them. "Am I interrupting something?" he asked, uneasy. Fry and Uriel both shook their heads. "Good. We're safe here. Sir Alone and Mikar didn't chase for long, but we could be attacked at any moment," Snow said. "Unlikely," Fry replied. "That isn't Aegon's way. The prince never moved at random. That was what made him dangerous." After one last look at Uriel, Fry shelved their conversation and turned his attention to Snow. Given where he stood, he didn't have much more to say to her anyway. Snow still wore the War King aspect he'd adopted most of the time, to acclimate himself to his new path of light. Forced to withdraw and flee before the situation escalated, the three of them now found themselves alone again. None of them had expected to face this the moment they finally returned. And between the prince and Fry, the latter's allies were few. "I never imagined the prince would trick us like that," Snow said, unable to let it go. "Phoenix mentioned the prince returned several days ago. That means the one we met on the Sacred Island was just a copy." It was the only explanation. But even that didn't make sense. "My senses can track even those at SSS tier, and I never once suspected the man before me was only a copy," Fry said, remembering the moment he took Aegon's head. "At the time, I truly believed he was the real one. But he wasn't." The more Fry thought about it, the worse the pounding in his skull became. The only way to pull that off is one of two things. Either a world-breaking ability that defies logic, or he's far stronger than I am. And in either case, those conditions shouldn't apply to Aegon. He was clever and devious, full of surprises. But he had never been a strong warrior. Most of his strength came from outside means. With that in mind, a frightening realization began to take hold in Fry, and Snow reached the same suspicion. "Fry, could it be?" Fry nodded. "I don't know what conspiracy we've stumbled into, but that thing is filthy, not human, and perhaps not Aegon at all." This suspicion had dogged Fry for a while, especially since Aegon had managed to reach Frey's true name. At first he'd thought some entity stood behind him, but after what had just happened, that possibility seemed smaller. And another grew in its place. This was not the human prince at all. It was something else entirely. Faces darkening by degrees, Snow and Fry began to grasp the weight of what that implied. If that's true, then most of humanity is currently following an external entity that has nothing to do with them. If so, toward what end? Who the hell is Aegon Valyrian? The answer was close. The more Fry learned about the prince, the more he understood the foul, bottomless abyss the man reflected. It felt as if the fateful war they'd fought so far had become a play. A black play that toyed with the fate of millions, its strings all pulled from the shadows without anyone's knowledge. Fry found himself stuck at the center of that theater. And the amount he could still change was shrinking by the day. Even after spending all his achievement points on the future vision ability, he saw only defeat and death ahead. To change that ill fate, he had to move at once. "Let's go," Fry said, voice low. "To where?" Snow asked. "To our comrades." Gathering together, Fry chose to teleport to the main front where the war against the Ultras raged. The Empire would now split. Though split was barely the word. Most would stand with Aegon while a few might fight beside Fry. Surrounded by enemies once more, Fry decided to do only what he had intended from the very beginning. Fight, hurl himself into the battlefield, follow the blood path, and seize as much power as possible to face whatever stood before him from this moment on. The level was rising, and deadlier clashes waited ahead. far from where Fry stood, on the other side of the world. Amid the forests of the eastern nightmare lands, a certain figure stumbled from tree to tree, clutching at trunks as he pushed on. He looked exhausted and wounded, yet his expression was the same as ever. Pausing a moment, he glanced down at his battered body and let out a muffled laugh. They really got me this time. Zebar, rank 10, had left the field in a crushing defeat after a grueling solo battle against the Shadow Sex fighters. In the end, only one copy survived, carrying 50% of his power. True, the copy that fought had not been the main body and possessed only 80% of the original strength. But that didn't change the fact that one of the top 10 demons had lost the battle. How pathetic, Zebar said with that same dry chuckle, then froze as another voice sounded nearby. Yes, you are pathetic, Zebar. A voice sweet and filthy as always. From the shadows, another demon emerged. This time he came in his true form, and Zebar's eyes narrowed. A cursed demon said to resemble Agaroth in his earliest days. A demon with 3 terrifying crimson eyes and a grin splitting his face from ear to ear. Weskier, Zebar said, naming his counterpart as the two stood face to face. I didn't expect you to come in person anytime soon, Zebar added, feeling the pressure of standing before him. This present copy carried only half his power. Nowhere near enough to face Weskier. And Weskier looked exactly as he had 19 years ago, as if it had been only yesterday. You're not wrong. I don't intend to appear in public. Not yet. What are you planning this time? Zebar asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Weskier shook his head. I would have told you, but you're a failure who just suffered a resounding defeat. I see no point in informing you of anything. Weskier laughed loudly, circling Zebar. I told you plainly, didn't I? I told you to bring your main body, and you disobeyed, sending a pathetic copy instead. At Weskier's taunt, Zebar didn't seem affected at all, which only proved he was used to Weskier's whims and tricks. And since both were among the top 10, Zebar showed no submission before him, even with the gulf in their strength. Yes, I remember you said that. I assume it was based on what your king's eye saw, wasn't it? Weskier nodded. That's correct. The king's eye could see fate and the future. He had likely known Zebar would face the Shadow Sex fighters and had been fully aware of their strength. That was why he ordered Zebar to use his main body in the fight. But Zebar ignored the order and it cost him. Forgive me, but that eye of yours hasn't been very reliable lately. As far as I know, it's colliding with a world-breaking ability of the same kind, isn't it? Again, Weskier nodded. Also correct, but I can still see beyond the scope of the likes of you, Zebar. You should have listened. Instead of returning with your tail between your legs, Weskier pressed, mocking. Zebar answered at once. You seem to enjoy ridiculing me, even though you, too, suffered a humiliating loss to a human in the past. Weskier, do you think I don't know what really happened? Weskier laughed louder. Well, you're not wrong. We don't have much time to waste, Zebar said. The world is convulsing, and the king, together with Crimson, refused to move. With that, Zebar stepped forward until he was shoulder to shoulder with Weskier. Both were towering. Figures fit only for nightmares. Darkness wreathed them as Zebar's violet eyes met Weskier's blood-red ones. Since I possess the soul of reincarnation, I've sent thousands of copies of myself roaming the world, to feel out any wave that might rise from nothing one day. And I can say with certainty, what's coming is a tidal wave. Weskier, your presence will be necessary. Whatever play you're staging this time, you'd best wrap it up quickly. Weskier shook his head in reply. So long as the king does not summon me, I see no need to return. Marva's is more than enough there in Helmont. I knew you'd say something like that. Zebar sighed, walking past him. That Fry Starlight. What's his secret? Why are you so obsessed with him? Why? Has he caught your interest, Zebar? Zebar paused and looked up at the sky. This world has begun to forget the terror of demons. The races gained their freedom after the king withdrew, and many warriors have appeared, said to stand at the level of the 7 great powers. The great ones themselves have begun to move strangely, after leaving no trace in this world for so long. As he spoke, both his and Weskir's eyes fell upon the vast birds sweeping across the heavens. The Chaos Eaters, counted among the great ones. They say their stirrings are paving the way for an ancient calamity, a disaster the ancients feared, and even the king said little about. I think such a calamity deserves far more attention than chasing the remnants of Nameless, who've become mere ghosts of what they once were, Zebar said with a smile, turning back to Weskir. For that reason, I won't be following your instructions anymore. I'll join the war of men myself. In that moment, Zebar stated it plainly. He would step out of the shadows, threatening to upend Weskir's plan. Fry Starlight, I want to see his true mettle for myself. Zebar's personal involvement would hasten the end, without question. Or so the rank 10 demon was counting on. Even as a copy bearing half his power, he still had enough to crush any human. By moving now, he was directly defying Weskir. And so he expected a reaction. But the 4th-ranked demon made no move. Seeing that this body of mine is still intact, it seems you truly intend to watch to the very end. Weskir nodded. Do as you like, Zebar. You're free to interfere as you wish. From the start, Weskir's smile hadn't shifted. And that made Zebar laugh aloud. You predicted this from the beginning, didn't you? At that, Weskir's king's eye flared, and Zebar's certainty deepened. Perhaps I did, perhaps I didn't, Weskir said. What matters now, Zebar, is that I need you to take care of a few tasks for me before you do what you intend. He stepped closer. That's why I've appeared before you today. What kind of tasks? Zebar asked, wary. Weskir's smile widened. The dirty kind. The sort only demons would commit. Far from the world's sight, Weskir spread his poison. His courier none other than the rank 10 demon, Zebar. And Zebar, for his part, showed his readiness to join the war of darkness. A warning of a shattering catastrophe looming on the horizon. The second half was destined to be more chaotic than ever before, and darker than any age that had ever passed. Fry Starlight's POV. A lot had happened, and life had started taking strange turns lately. Bracing myself, I took hold of both Uriel and Snow, readying to use teleportation. Our destination is our comrades at the vanguard. I confirmed what we were about to do, triggered my ability, and we all shifted, teleporting for the 2nd time that day. What if Aegon set some kind of trap there? Snow asked, considering the possibility. I simply shook my head. Unlikely. And even if he did, we have plenty of allies there. My target was Sansa, with Ghost and most of those who had followed me into the war at her side. Even if Aegon tried some trick, our individual power was far beyond what he could handle. With Snow and me together, we're a force they can't manage. So I was confident we'd arrive safely. Even so, because of the wild aura fluctuations I sensed where Sansa and the others were, it had become difficult to land exactly on their position. We'll probably drop somewhere close to the battlefield, so be ready for anything. At my warning, Snow and Uriel both nodded, and I began at once. Teleportation was instantaneous. Reality flipped on its head, and we found ourselves in a different spot on the Ultras continent. The dead earth and suffocating sky were the same, but things were tangled. And within seconds the sound of screams and clashing weapons reached us from nearby. Before us sprawled a wide, barren plain, the ground smeared with blood. A thunderous battle was raging there now. A closer look told me the enemies weren't human at all, but something else entirely. Something I knew well. These are... Snow began, trying to parse what he was seeing. I took over. Puppets. Puppets animated by a strange blue fluid that served as their blood. The very same puppets I'd faced in the past when I clashed with Simon Manus. I'd thought I destroyed most of them, but the number before me was horrifying. So great that our Imperial forces were being pushed to the brink. I didn't know the full situation, but I moved at once with Snow. Questions later. For now. Help them. I don't need you to tell me that. In a lightning flash, Snow and I surged forward, Uriel following behind. It took only seconds to join the fight, and our arrival sent ripples of chaos through the ranks, drawing every eye. Slash! With Vermithor's light and Balerian's darkness. We tore through the puppets at high speed, driving straight through their lines with the intent to wipe them all out. Our faces were known. The Imperial side recognized us both, and their morale spiked at once. It's Snow Lionheart and Fry Starlight. They've finally returned. Seeing the soldiers cheer, I realized Aegon's ploys hadn't reached this front yet. If they were hostile to me, they wouldn't have reacted like this. So at the very least, they weren't enemies. With that settled, I focused entirely on erasing the foes before me and stopped paying attention to what lay behind. Slash! My blade sheared metal with ease. The puppets didn't stand a chance. Now and then I spotted familiar faces among them, like the policeman puppet that used electricity, or the fat clown who once swallowed one of my lookalikes. Clanna Starlight, long ago, thinking of those times dredged up bitter memories. Somewhere inside, her specter still haunted me to this day, shredding puppets that burst into flame each time they died. I found myself frustrated with the whole situation. Destroying puppets didn't count toward the blood path at all, meaning I couldn't increase my power by killing them, and they stirred up hateful memories besides. All of it pushed me to end the battle as fast as possible. Their numbers were immense, even if each was weak. And that was why the Empire was losing to them. I counted at least several thousand, crawling forward like ants from the distance, as if some factory were churning them out without end. Seeing you stirred up foul memories I thought I'd buried, so don't blame me for playing rough. Gathering dark aura, focusing all my strength, I released a colossal vertical cut, unleashing the strongest strike in my arsenal. 10,000 steps of shadow, Fry Starlight style. Nameless judgment. The instant it fired, time itself seemed to stall, and a black flood roared forth, swallowing puppets one after another. Along with everything around them, that wave of darkness was terrifying to behold. Its destructive reach went beyond imagining, leaving not a trace of the puppets it touched. The darkness tunneled on for miles before finally detonating far ahead, sending a violet spark spearing into the sky. And the blow was enough to end thousands of puppets at once, heralding the end of the battle. I'm not used to seeing you use moves like that on this kind of enemy, Snow said, tracing the path of ruin my strike had carved. He sounded surprised that I'd used one of my strongest techniques on foes like these. If we cut them down one by one, we'll never be done. This is the best way to deal with them. No argument here, Snow grinned, and the two of us turned toward the Imperial forces. With the enemy finished, it was time to hear from our allies. Within seconds, a certain man stepped toward us. Someone I hadn't seen in a long time. I was wondering where those violent aura fluctuations were coming from, and it turns out it was you too. The hero of the Victoriad and the Church's hero. He approached, his body wreathed in a surging aura shaped like serpents of lightning. He wore a stunning golden cuirass, a strange armor that suited his form so perfectly it looked like a part of him. Blonde hair, golden eyes, and an overwhelming build. Demon. It was Demon Valerian, one of my former classmates in the elite class. It's been a while, Starlight. I thought your last strike would kill me, but I came out without a scratch, unexpectedly. Can you really control your power that precisely? Demon said with a mocking smile that couldn't hide his genuine surprise, so much so it struck him as absurd. I nodded, confirming his guess. Earlier, Demon had been up front fighting the puppets alone, so he was inside the range of nameless judgment. But I sensed his presence ahead of time and screened him from the damage. That was one of the perks I gained from the third stage of shadow adaptation. Perfect aura control. Amazing. You two have gotten so strong it actually makes me angry. You don't look ordinary either, Snow answered, eyeing Demon. That strange armor you're wearing, something about it is doing something to you. Snow wasn't wrong. You could say the armor wasn't just something Demon wore anymore. It looked like a part of him, carved deep into his flesh and skin. I noticed it too. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say around 40% of Demon's body had vanished and been replaced by the armor. It was a bizarre phenomenon. Nothing I'd seen or heard of before, but Demon waved it off, turning away as he gestured for us to follow. "Since you're back, you can help. Along with the saint with you," Demon said flatly, leading the way. We went with him, passing companies of soldiers, 100 strong, who burst into applause and cheers. "Welcome back! Hail the heroes!" The mood was nothing like what we faced when we ran into Aegon earlier. Despite the horrific outcome and the millions dead in the Empire, it didn't stop those here from clapping for what we'd achieved. "You're popular here. Like some kind of superheroes," Demon scoffed, striding past everyone. I didn't miss my chance to ask him something that mattered. "What about you, Demon? Do you share their opinion?" There was a hidden edge to the question, and Demon caught it at once. He turned with a smile, golden light flickering in his eyes. "Your question's stupid, Fry Starlight. I don't harbor the sappy fantasies those pitiful soldiers do. To me, you look more like a hungry monster than a gallant hero." Joking, he jabbed a thumb at Snow. "But our flamboyant friend here, that's another story if you catch my drift. Heh. Don't forget you lost to me, Demon Valyrian," Snow said, annoyed. Demon stuck out his tongue. "It was a draw. If we hadn't been interrupted, it wouldn't have ended like that. Shall we resume now, then?" "I'm ready whenever you are." Snow needled him on purpose, knowing full well that with his current strength he'd win, no question. Demon waved a hand and kept walking. "We can have our rematch after this war. There's too much to do right now." Unusually for him, Demon kept a tight rein on himself as he led us to the place he'd made his base. "Welcome to my office," he said, spreading his armored arms, though the office was just a shabby, threadbare tent. "What office?" I muttered with a chuckle, while Uriel sat off to the side, keeping out of the talk. I figured her mind was crowded, especially after what happened between us earlier. I set it aside for now. I was honestly glad to see Demon the same as ever. Snow, though, looked doubtful. "Demon, aren't you a Valyrian?" "Of course I am. What's with that damned question?" Demon pulled a ridiculous face. Snow sighed. "You're part of the ruling house, and as you can see, your family doesn't like us right now." He had a point, and Demon's expression turned serious. "Well, that's only natural. According to Aegon, our friend Fry Starlight here plans to kill the ruling family and rebel against them," Demon said, and we started to grasp what Aegon had done. "Rebellion, then?" I murmured, and Demon nodded, stepping closer. "They're saying you intend to kill Aegon first, then Mikar, his brothers, and their father by the end of the war. They call you a monster of uncontrollable power." Circling us, Demon went on. "A monster who wants to wipe out the Ultras and the Empire alike, to become the sole ruler." Aegon had used two things: people's fear, specifically their fear of me after everything they'd seen me do, and my behavior toward him and the ruling house, which looked like a plain attempt to rebel. Aegon had always been a deft manipulator, good at steering people's feelings and making fools of them. This time he'd taken his game wide. "What about you, Demon? What do you think of all these claims?" Snow asked, wary. Demon shrugged. "What do you mean? I don't have an opinion. From the start, I don't care what Aegon says. He's a trick-loving pest. I prefer the direct approach." Hearing that, I smiled for real, satisfied with his intent. "You've got a unique way of thinking, Demon, and I don't dislike it. In fact, I think I like it." In response to my honest words, Demon looked disgusted. "Are you turning your twisted tastes on me now, Starlight? If you've got fancy lines, save them for your demon sweetheart," he said, then turned his head toward Uriel. "Or the saint who's been staring at you for a while now. Planning to build yourself a harem?" Demon stepped in and set a hand behind my back. "I'm starting to believe what Aegon said. You're definitely trying to sire a cursed bloodline here. A demoness and a saint. What kind of imperial family would that make for us, Starlight? At his casual talk about making babies, Uriel's face flushed, and Snow wore a strange look. As for me, I just laughed and brushed his hand away. He was still an ally. His affection points toward me hadn't changed, and that honestly made me happy. Enough nonsense. Our situation comes first. I pushed Demon to the point we'd come for. What happened in the war? Where are the others? By others, I meant the rest of our comrades. Our elite class and the rest of the vanguard. Filling you in on everything would take forever and be a pain in the ass, so I'll keep it short. Demon led us to a rickety table inside the tent and gave us the gist. A few minutes later, we were fully up to speed on what we'd missed. The moment you left for the sacred island, the Ultras started hitting us hard, exploiting your absence and the church's focus on you. That's why we've been fighting them non-stop, and the Sons of Whores have killed a lot of us. Taking advantage of my absence and the church being tied up, the Ultras hit hard this time. Their offensive splits into 3 fronts, Demon said, pointing at the map. 3 colors marked the Ultras: black, blue, and red. The way they're attacking is very organized. Means a military expert is leading them. He's divided them into 3 factions. The ones you just fought are the blue. Blue represents the force formed by an alliance of 2 hollows. Simon Manus with the puppet army, together with the cursed knight, Pontiff Sullivan. The first is a mysterious man said to worship strange entities other than demons. The second, a mindless SS+ tier beast. And with them, an endless army of puppets. They say the hollow Ludwig also shows up with them from time to time. At Ludwig's name, Snow's eyes lit up. The one who killed his mother and slipped away recently. In short, the blue side has seen all the hollows except the Blood Queen, Evelyn. Demon continued. The red side is the one that's done us the most damage. Lord Gavid Lindemann. Those who fought him say he's got a masked warrior of the same caliber as you, Fry Starlight, Demon added. Almost certainly V. I'd ignored him till now, but the time to deal with him was close. I intended to do it myself. Demon moved to the last front. Last but not least, the black side, the mildest of the 3 Lord Murgo's forces. He only kills when necessary, so they're the easiest to handle, even if many there are strong. And they say an ancient lord has reappeared among them. Finishing his annoyed briefing, Demon summed it up. I've been stationed here with a unit to hold Simon Manus's puppets. There are several squads nearby, and the rest of our forces are split across the other fronts. In other words, we're up against blue right now. Taking that in, Snow looked to me. What now? Do we head out and find the others? It was a good idea. Find Sansa and Ghost and team up. I simply shook my head. No. I set my priorities. We'll join Demon's team and finish the blue front, I said. We'll kill every hollow and end them, then regroup with the others and crush the remaining fronts. That's my plan. I was here first and foremost to fight and end the war. So hunting the enemies down one by one was the clearest path. Along the way, I could work out a plan for the prince, or whoever lurked behind him. Snow and Uriel didn't seem opposed, so I nodded to them and turned to Demon with a wide grin. I hope you've got room for 3 more soldiers. I said it lightly. Demon scowled, then opened his mouth. I quit. Fry Starlight's POV. Our meeting with Demon ended in a blink, light on details. Musclebrain was never suited for briefings or leadership to begin with. He led us to a corner of the camp and handed us a place to sleep. We move at dawn. Until then, do whatever you want. Sleep, train, have sex. I don't care. Just don't make too much noise, Demon said, waving as he walked off. He was still wearing the golden dragon armor that now seemed part of his body. From the way it looked, I doubted he could take it off even if he wanted to. Seeing him like that made me wonder what exactly he'd done to end up this way. Watching his broad back recede, he reminded me a lot of Danzo. Danzo died some time ago, but I still find myself remembering him. His shadow forms before me often, especially in the moments when I lose myself. With Demon here, that shadow felt alive again. Even so, I was genuinely glad to see Demon. These simple feelings are something I want to cherish as long as I'm able. They mean a great deal to me. Seconds later, Demon vanished into the camp, leaving the three of us alone. So we're back to the battlefield tomorrow, Uriel said softly. We're already back, I answered with a slow nod. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say we hadn't even had time to catch our breath. I'm used to that kind of pressure. But it's different for Uriel. She'd seemed a little flustered lately, especially after Demon's bold talk. She's innocent, and to be honest, given my current relationship with her, I wouldn't have much trouble taking advantage if I wanted to. But I didn't want that. Uriel is too pure, like a living, spotless white canvas. I, on the other hand, am closer to a bottomless black abyss. If I touched her, my darkness would seep into her and rob her of that purity. The thought of defiling something so pure was tempting, if I'm honest. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't pictured it. But I wouldn't do it. What little feeling remains in me dwindles by the day. My heart leans toward nothing in this life. Not to mention Sansa. I don't even know what I feel for her. Uriel is similar. Both of them and the others with them are people I treasure. People I want safe. But do I love them? Do I love Sansa? Do I love Uriel? Maybe, and maybe not. I can't give an answer, or even think straight about it. In the middle of war and all its nonsense. So if we win the war and everything ends well, maybe then I'll have an answer. Until then, whatever feelings they hold for me are fated to hang in the balance. Catching Uriel's eyes. She's been looking my way a lot lately. I could only feel sorry for her, because she loves someone like me. Those were my thoughts about such things. Until Snow pulled me back to reality. Are you sure? About not wanting to see the others now? He meant Sansa and Ghost most likely. I wasn't worried about them. They're strong. They'll be fine. There aren't many Ultras who can truly threaten Sansa. As for Ghost, he always finds a way. Snow nodded, agreeing at least to that extent. So we'll be fighting the Hollows from here on. Yeah, they're very strong, but at our current level it won't be difficult to handle them. That is, as long as it's just Pontiff Sulivan and Ludwig. Then Simon Manus is the most dangerous? Isn't he SS? While Pontiff Sulivan is SS+. Uriel asked, uneasy. She was right. There's a full tier between them. But Simon's danger lies elsewhere entirely. Simon Manus is unique. He's neither contracted with demons nor one of their followers. His threat is in the puppets he wields. In the past, he used against me a puppet of an ancient lord. SS tier. I said it plainly, remembering that fight. Simon controlled Lord Val's puppet, along with thousands of others. At the same time, in wartime, Simon Manus and his puppets are a real catastrophe. An army you can't underestimate. He's the main reason I prioritized this front over the others. Understanding Simon's threat, Snow and Uriel both nodded. Then let's deal with him quickly and rejoin the others, Snow said with a confident smile. Honestly, with me and Snow on the field, there's nothing about the Ultras to fear. The real danger would be a third, anomalous force stepping in. But the stronger demons haven't joined the war yet, so we're safe for now. Who knows when that balance will break? Until then, I have to be ready. Let's get some rest, you two. We've got a long day ahead. I motioned for them to turn in. It was already late. Snow and I would sleep in the same space, while a separate place had been arranged for Uriel at my request. Good night to you both. Try to rest and recharge. Even people like you have limits. Uriel insisted we rest, and I could only agree. Good night to you too. And don't worry, I'm not planning to sneak out and pick a fight. I joked, but her scowl said she took me seriously. Snow stepped in, slinging an arm over my shoulder and hauling me toward our tent. Don't worry, I'm not letting him go anywhere, he said, dragging me along by force. I get it, man. No need to pull. I can walk on my own. I sighed as we ducked into the tent and waved to Uriel. She waved back, and in a blink, quiet settled over the place. The tent held two simple cots. Snow took one, I took the other, and we lay down in silence. For all our bravado, we were both exhausted. We hadn't slept properly in days spent fighting battle after battle. This is what it means to shoulder a war from the front. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say I've borne most of the war's horrors alone so far. Everything that came with them. There isn't an enemy I haven't faced among the Ultras elites and the Church. I did it alone, but now Snow had shown he was ready to stand with me and carry the fight. You know, Snow, I'm really grateful to you. I never trusted anything on the battlefield except my own strength, but you've grown strong enough to keep pace with me. Watching you, sir, honestly made me happy. For the first time, I can give someone my back without worry. I don't think I've thanked you properly, and I might not get the chance later, so thank you. Snow Lionheart's presence, and his willingness to give so much for my sake, made me genuinely grateful, so I made sure to say it right. But no reply, only silence, broken by the steady rhythm of his breathing. I turned his way to find he'd already passed out, mouth open, gulping the air around him. Seeing how fast he crashed, I didn't know what to say. Weren't you the one who said you wouldn't let me go anywhere? In that state, you couldn't stop a fly? I muttered, lying back again. I stared up at the tense, tattered ceiling. I closed my eyes slowly, and the sound of my thoughts echoed in the dark. The war is entering its final stages now, and the outcome will soon be revealed. We were close, so very close to the end of the War of Darkness. Since the beginning, I've fought like a madman and butchered thousands with my own hands. From time to time, I used the system's future vision, unable to kill my curiosity about how it would all end. But even after burning all my achievement points, after doing everything I could, I saw no happy future. Only murky visions. Visions of a future where I stood among corpses with the Empire lost. Completely, miserably. It was a horrific vision that tightened my nerves further and further. Worst of all, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't see how we lost. Like something was blocking the truth from me. Whatever the cause, it was terrible enough that I couldn't change the future, no matter what I did. If things kept going like this, we would lose. Inevitably. Future vision. For all the dread it showed me, the vision felt strange this time, as if it lacked detail, as if something were interfering. Thinking it over, I opened my eyes again and brought up the system interface. There my odd ability gleamed. Snapshot of the future. An ability that shows me what's to come. Truly powerful. Power of that caliber is surely world-breaking. Akin to shadow adaptation. In other words, as the engineer Gehrman once said, the system is nothing but a manifestation of my own power and abilities. If that's true, then Snapshot of the Future is itself an ability. And likely a world-breaking one, if this ability showed interference, was obstructed. Doesn't that mean it collided with another ability of the same class? I sat up on the cot again, thinking it through. When it comes to abilities of inevitability law, there are very few on Earth who wield that kind of power. Me, and the engineer Gehrman, and rank 4 demon Weskier. Could it be that the reason I saw nothing but defeat was because the final enemy on the other side is Weskier? Will an opponent of his caliber appear at the end? Against whom? A handful of humans. None of whom have even reached SSS tier? If that happens, that's the end. Unless someone intervenes, we'll die in disgrace. The thought gnawed at me, and just imagining it summoned nightmares. What would I do if I found myself against him? Against Weskier? Eyes on the system interface, I checked all my stats. Host name, Fry Starlight, Dual Soul. Class, Dualist. Talent, SS+. Current rank, SS-. Strength, SS. Speed, SS. Agility, SS. Endurance, SS. Aura, SSS. Magic. Dueling Art LV. 7 max. Talents. Dueling. Aura Manipulation. Poison Immunity. Combat Style. 10,000 Steps of Shadow. Skills. Hawk's Eye class. Phantom Steps. a class. Seduction, D class. Ascension, S class. Ignition, SS class. Screenshot, SS class. Abilities, spatial manipulation. Shadow adaptation 4-7. Stage 1. Adaptation to all combat styles, generating counters to any technique. Stage 2. Adaptation to all bodily injuries, granting extreme regeneration that repairs the body autonomously. Stage 3. Adaptation to all aura types, granting perfect control and absolute command over both ambient aura and the aura within the user. Stage 4. Anti-magic, level 2. Current achievement points, 0. I'll have to break my limit again if I want to become stronger than I am now. But to do that, I needed achievement points. And those had become hard to get. The quests rarely appeared anymore. Only the final quest remained. The one that would let me master shadow adaptation completely. I had reached stage 4. To be honest, I still had no idea what this stage actually granted me. I hadn't felt any real increase in power, so much so that for a moment I thought nothing had happened. But somewhere inside, I was certain something had changed. Something was waking up. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but the deeper I sank into shadow adaptation, into mastering its stages, the more it felt like I was unlocking shackles around something sleeping deep within me. A vast, overwhelming power. But it came with something else. Something I might not be ready for. Maybe, if I master all 7 stages, will that mean my existence disappears entirely? Do I become nothing but a distant, thinning shadow, while the true owner of these powers awakens? And then, Nameless might truly return to life. Ah, this is not the time for an existential crisis. I muttered with a laugh, lying back on the cot. With thoughts this dark circling me constantly, there was no way I could sleep. Sleeping with Uriel might not have been the worst idea. At times like these, I needed something. Someone to throw my consciousness far away. Unfortunately, I no longer knew how to do that on my own. And so, I ended up staying awake until morning broke and it was time to move. Toward another battle. Another war that would bring me one step closer to the end I was desperately trying to escape. Fry Starlight's POV. Man, I slept like a baby. Snow yawned and stretched as he walked beside me. Morning had already broken, and we were pushing toward the next battlefield. You definitely did, I said, sighing. Just as I'd expected. I hadn't slept a single minute. I spent the whole night scrolling through the system, drowning myself in every scenario and possibility. Fry, don't tell me you didn't sleep at all, Uriel asked, worried. I shook my head. Not a minute. Terrible insomnia, as you can see. I gave a faint, self-mocking laugh. But Uriel took it seriously. In a blink, she reached out, and her golden, sacred power flowed through me. It was soothing. The fatigue and heaviness melted away as if by magic. It won't make up for the sleep you missed, but at least you'll be able to fight at your best. Ah, thanks. I thanked her honestly. She waved it off. I didn't know what to say after that. There was a strange, awkward air between us. Honestly harder to manage than fighting the Ultras. Thankfully, Demon cut in as usual. As he strode near, quit loafing and get ready. From here on we move at full speed. His voice carried, hard and commanding, to every soldier present. Our goal is to link up with our comrades on this front. Reports say they're facing the Hollows head-on right now, so we move fast. Sir, yes sir. The soldiers roared as one. Aura flared around them, cloaking their bodies as they broke into a full sprint. Our feet hammered the ground, shaking it as we tore across the barren wastes at staggering speed. Up front, the 3 of us ran with Demon, leading the entire battalion. Demon, which hollow are we facing? I asked. Pontiff Sullivan. And there's a chance Simon is nearby as well. 2 hollows at once, then. What's this? Is the great Fry Starlight afraid of a few hollows? At that, a frightening smile crept over my face before I noticed. Enough to make Demon freeze for a heartbeat. The opposite, demon. Better this way. I won't have to hunt them one by one, and we'll finish fast. That's a scary thing to say, but I won't comment, he muttered, then glanced at me serious. I don't mind you butchering our enemies however you like, Fry. But remember, your enemies are everywhere. We're about to join the rest of our forces, and who knows? Some among them might want you dead. They might not be the same ones Aegon whipped up against me before, but the odds that some answer to him are high. I'd already accounted for it. No need to worry. We'll handle it if it happens. Snow cut in. Fight the enemy in front and watch your back for a knife. Annoying, but within what we can bear. Snow wasn't wrong, but I couldn't help prodding him. You sure you can manage that? At the rate you sleep, the war might end without you noticing. You're not going to let that go, are you? He sighed, annoyed. No. Under the morning sun, with a chill in the air reminding us winter had only just passed, our march lasted a few hours. Yet at our pace we reached our destination quickly. We're here, Demon said as we halted beside him atop a low ridge. From there we had a clear view of what lay ahead. A wide, barren plain, the kind you see everywhere on the Ultras continent. A brutal battle raged below. We could hear its echo and feel the aura shockwaves. Looks like we made it just in time. The fight's about to peak, Snow said, scanning the field. A force far larger than demons was deployed there, thousands strong. And facing them stood an army that outnumbered them by far. The puppet host, backed by Ultras fighters. Among them, I sensed several strong presences in the distance. Let's go, I said, and leapt from the ridge with the others. Our aim is to support and cut down as many enemies as we can. Prepare for battle, Demon barked as we plunged into the fray. The field was chaos. Aura shells detonated from every direction without pause. With each passing minute, the sky filled with thousands of element-laced arrows. Fire arrows, lightning arrows, every kind of projectile. Parrying them was easy for me, but dozens of soldiers died with every volley. Let's see what the Ultras have to offer this time. Their numbers were massive, as always, and I had to resist the urge to erase them all with nameless judgment. No one knew what might surface among them, and I had no desire to repeat what happened with Bladier. So I took the hard way, cutting them down one by one. Slash! We punched through the Ultras' flank, and Snow, Demon, and I drove deep into their ranks. Most were metal puppets, but my blades slid through them with ease. The Ultras noticed us and prioritized our elimination, turning their full aggression our way. Yet it didn't slow my pace in the slightest. The heat of battle, the echo of war, those moments. The press of blades from every side, enemies racing to cut me down. I realized I'd missed this feeling. This was real war. The church had been strong, but the Ultras were different. It's like playing a war game and having a favorite kind of enemy you love to kill every time. The Ultras were that kind of enemy for me. Without noticing, that same terrifying smile crept back onto my face. The one that planted fear in the Ultras' hearts and plagued them with nightmares. He's back. One of them gasped, shock plain on his face. The Black Death has returned. So that's what they call me? The Black Death? Am I some kind of plague? Hearing the nickname they'd given me, I laughed without meaning to. What a damn title. Slash. With a quick sweep of Dark Sister, a dozen heads spun away. Among them the unlucky fool who just announced my title. Beside me, Snow Lionheart unleashed natural disasters of destructive elements, wreaking havoc among the Ultras. Likewise, Demon handled anyone foolish enough to lay a hand on him. His power had surged to a shocking degree. I saw him laughing like a madman as he crushed enemies with his bare hands. I am the pinnacle of human evolution. That's what he said. I still don't know what exactly he did, or how his armor became part of his body, but among our generation he was truly evolving the fastest. Seeing the two of them hold their own, I decided to push ahead and target the Ultra's strongest rather than waste time on common soldiers. Unleashing SSS Tier Aura, I spread a colossal violet dome across the entire battlefield, sealing everyone inside. Within this field, I could see and hear everything. No one could escape me. And needless to say, finding the hollows wasn't difficult. Deep in the far lines, a brutal fight raged, Imperial soldiers being crushed beneath the savagery of one of the most vicious hollows. Pontiff Sulivan. Locking onto him, a wide smile tugged at my lips as I triggered teleportation. Found you. Deep within the battlefield. On the front where the violence burned hottest. A man ran like a beast on 3 limbs, dragging a massive greatsword behind him with his one remaining hand. He was unique. Matchless in all the world. A man whose face no one knew, clad in broken black armor from which black, rotten blood seeped. From behind his shattered helm, he spoke no words. Only a beast's howl tore out of him, a howl stitched to a scream that spelled madness. The Hollow. Pontiff Sulivan. A knight whose origin was unknown, whose lineage was no one's guess. All anyone knew. He appeared from nowhere and drank deep of demon blood, so much that it drove him mad. His body had never been fit to bear that blood, but he resisted on will alone, until the blood broke him, and he became a monster, a mindless, superhuman knight who rips apart anything that comes near. Now the entire empire had heard his voice, and felt the weight of his blade. Aerurf! Aerurf! The feral scream carried for miles, the pontiff a walking nightmare on the field. Many strong fighters tried to stop him. To no avail. He butchered them all. This section of the field was under Gal Varian Sunlight, younger brother of Iris Sunlight, a warrior of SS tier. He was suppressed and crushed when he faced the pontiff head-on. Gal had brought several fighters of SS- and S+ ranks, thinking with their help they could pin down that mindless beast. Reality proved far crueler. The pontiff slaughtered them. The battle was so brutal Gal lost an arm when he tried to wound and kill the pontiff. From the start, they erred in treating him as human. The pontiff was closer to a demonic nightmare than a man. Gal's overwhelming defeat drew most capable fighters to his side to try and rein the pontiff in. To no effect. The pontiff tore about like a rabid dog, carving through soldiers. From the sky, dozens of ice lances rained down on his head, but he shattered them all with a single sweep of his sword. Ceres Moonlight was there, wings unfurled as she kept to the air, pelting him with every kind of strike. No use. Stop! From afar, someone shouted, sending a sonic wave that stunned the pontiff for a heartbeat. In that brief opening, Frost Moonlight lunged, driving his great spear rhymes hard for the pontiff's chest. But the ice aura was completely blocked by the pontiff's armor, swathed in darkness. The pontiff snapped free at once and struck again. Frost was too weak to take the blow from that colossal blade, and luckily, he vanished from before the pontiff as if by magic, the great sword slamming into the earth instead. In a blink, Frost reappeared behind him, teleporting to safety. Damn it! How are we supposed to kill this thing? The one who teleported Frost wasn't anyone but the witch Selena, wrath-cursed. Raising her hand from afar toward the pontiff, she gathered all her power. Aura amplification. Times 30. All across Selena's body, sigils she had carved into her own skin flared to life. Among the marks, the number 30 burned. Power multiplied 30-fold. That vast force coalesced before the witch as a colossal blue flame, turning every head on the battlefield for a heartbeat. Odd that a single girl could marshal so much aura. Burn in hell, Selena screamed. And with her cry the fire swelled monstrously, then shot forth as a titanic beam. A torrent of flame that devoured everything in its path until it reached the pontiff, swallowing him whole. Boom! The blast echoed across the field, pillars of blue fire climbing into the sky in a breathtaking sight. Did it work? Many asked the same, only to get their answer when the knight strode out of the flames, dragging his sword. The blue fire burned over his armor, but did nothing except make him more terrifying. Pontiff Sulivan turned this time toward Selena. Her multiplied power had piqued his instincts. Seeing those red eyes flare her way, fear seized Selena. She stumbled back and grabbed Dawn Polaris, who was near her, shoving him forward. Do something, good luck charm. Ha! Dawn was there too. Flustered, the lucky duelist had no idea what to do. Selena hid behind him while the pontiff broke into a run straight for them. The Mad Knight's speed was horrifying. In seconds he was on them. Quick! Do something! Selena shrieked, smacking his back. That only rattled him more. Even if you tell me to. What exactly do you expect me to do against a monster like this? He's SS+. Dawn blurted, sweating, as the pontiff's aura pressure crashed down on him like thunder. Clutching his sword, Dawn's face turned to stone. Enough of this nonsense. Ready up. Beside them stood a short girl with white hair and green eyes. A familiar presence. Their older former classmate, Ellen White. She had helped a lot with her sonic abilities, but against someone like the pontiff, her role was very limited. Frost gripped his spear, ready to fight, and Ceres backed them from the sky. They were all gifted. But against a beast like this, it looked like they were going to be butchered today. Galvarion Sunlight watched from afar and tried to aid them, only to collapse, bloodied, after being crushed by the pontiff. Damn it! Death was closing in fast. Come on, Dawn. Do it! Selena shouted again. Do what, you damned bitch? What do you think I am? Dawn snapped back, losing control. Huh! Aren't you the one who bragged you'd survive no matter what? Why are you acting like a cowardly gigolo now? It's not up to me. I can't control this ability. Then make it happen. You're out of time. While they bickered, the pontiff had already arrived. Frost and Ceres tried to strike him, and Ellen bought them a few seconds more. But that was all they managed, and the pontiff tore through everything they threw at him. Charging like an animal, he leapt high and brought his colossal greatsword down toward them. A blow carrying the full might of a mindless SS+ knight could easily have killed them both at once. Dawn was weak and Selena was a mage. Even multiplied, her body was as fragile as Dawn's. All of it pointed to one outcome if they took the hit. Death. Death raced toward them. A miracle. We need a miracle, Selena whispered. The age of miracles ended a long time ago, Dawn answered, the pontiff's blade filling his eyes. On the battlefield, there is nothing but death. Or perhaps not. Before Dawn and Selena's widening eyes, and the shock of everyone nearby. The pontiff's massive sword stopped a few centimeters from Dawn's face. A heartbeat later, they realized a jet-black blade had caught it. And not merely caught it. Slash! With a stunning surge of violet aura, the pontiff was blasted backward, forced to stab his great sword deep into the earth to keep from toppling. He found himself right back where he'd started, after taking a strike he hadn't sensed and never expected. Before Dawn and Selena, he appeared out of nowhere, a man with long white hair and violet eyes blazing like coals. After batting the pontiff away, he turned to Dawn. What the hell were you two arguing about with the enemy in your faces? He asked, baffled by the pair. They both shouted at once, startled. Fry! The miracle had come. Back up, you two. Things are about to get violent, Fry said with a wide smile that bared his thirst for blood. With heavy steps, he started toward the pontiff. And the real fight was about to begin. Fry Starlight's POV. Fall back, all of you. I'll handle him. Advancing step by step, I said it curtly and pushed everyone away. I hadn't expected to see so many familiar faces here, nor to find them taking on the pontiff alone despite the gulf in tears. That was reckless enough to get them killed. At least I'd arrived in time to keep that from happening. Most of them looked stunned to see me. No doubt everyone here still thought I was fighting on the Holy Island, unaware of what happened there. I'd explain later. For now, that broken knight took priority. Face to face at last, Pontiff Sullivan. I spoke clearly, and got nothing back but a scream. Rafa! He howled and charged me in rage. I see you can't understand a word I'm saying. Boom! The pontiff was blindingly fast. He reached me in a blink. He tried to split me with a single swing, but I caught it on my blades, steel shrieking as metal ground against metal. The moment I parried the first strike, He began windmilling that great sword like a madman, trying to pulp me by brute force. There was no technique to it, no swordsmanship, just pure savagery. He was strong, yes, but I met everything he threw at me without trouble. Standing toe-to-toe with him, I caught the faint glint of his eyes behind a dented, shattered helm. Demon blood has done a lot to you, rotted your mind and left you little more than an animal. Boom! The pontiff flooded his blows with aura, trying to force me back. I matched him, and the pressure between us blasted the ground apart. In that clash of fields, it wasn't hard to tell who held the upper hand. My aura is SSS tier after all, but I kept it leashed. We were fighting in the middle of two armies tearing each other to pieces. Normally, fighters at our level would clear the crowds to keep allies out of the splash zone. The pontiff had no such thought. In truth, he had no thoughts at all, only instinct. Every collision between us sent out shockwaves that chewed up anything too close. Thankfully, my allies knew the score and supported from range. Ceres raised towering ice walls around us, turning the ground into a frozen arena. The walls weren't strong enough to withstand our strikes, but she rebuilt them the instant we shattered them, shielding the soldiers outside. Good. I can cut loose a little without worrying too much. Leaving the side matters to the others, I drove at the pontiff on his terms. Raw brutality, raw strength. Pontiff Sullivan is an oddity even among SS Plus fighters. No flashy techniques, no exalted forms. Just a beast relying on his body. That made him far simpler to fight than most, his wild, savage swings easy to read. Letting shadow adaptation absorb his patterns, I met him head-on with ease, my blades biting deeper into his guard with every exchange. He swept at me with that darkness-coated greatsword, trying to crush me. But I turned him aside each time, sparks flaring as steel screamed. To be honest, Pontiff, I could end you with one sweeping strike. But somewhere in me, I find myself pitying you. Dodging his blows, ignoring the animal bellow in my face, I carved more and more into his armor. For every strike of his, I answered with 10. In speed and in force alike. He couldn't match me. I've climbed too far, and anyone beneath the absolute peak of SS Plus no longer poses much danger. Today, I'll kill Pontiff Sullivan and rid the world of another hollow. But first, I wanted at least to try to reach the person buried under that monstrous shell. Lately, the lives around me don't mean much, least of all my enemies. If I claimed I cared now, I'd be nothing but a damned hypocrite. A brutal cut opened a huge gash across the pontiff's chest, filthy black blood oozing out. I know how hypocritical this sounds, but I can't help asking, Pontiff, is there truly nothing left inside you but the beast you've become? This shattered knight, this feral hollow, he was singular. I remembered him clearly. I'd even written about him once, and his story had stuck with me. Seeing him here brought those memories roaring back. I tried to reach him. He answered fast. A raraf. A bestial howl, a suicidal charge, a rabid need to kill me. The pontiff had been busy these past days, set loose on the battlefield like a rabid dog, the Ultra's blunt instrument for slaughter and ruin. In recent days he'd taken scores of Imperial lives and cut down many S-tier and above. Simply put, ignoring him was no longer an option. He screamed in my face, and I found myself smiling, almost understanding. I get it, so there's no point in trying. In that case, let's end this. Midway through the clash between Fry Starlight and Pontiff Sullivan, for a heartbeat it felt as if the very air had grown heavier. Let's end this. That's what Fry said. And with those words, everything changed, as if he had become someone else entirely. He narrowed his eyes, tightened his grip on Balerion and Dark Sister, and let his true power surge. Under that ominous pressure, even the pontiff faltered. His senses and instincts shrieking at him to flee from the man before him. But it was too late. There was no turning back now. 10,000 steps of shadow. Supreme art. Echo of the abyss. Faster than sound, Fry hewed into the pontiff, tearing open the knight's chest. His blades were wreathed in a baleful violet flame that pierced the pontiff's armor with ease. Fry didn't strike once. He moved again at the same blistering speed, trailing a violet afterglow behind him. In the same manner he cut the pontiff again and again. Then a third time, a fourth, a fifth, until Sullivan hung caught inside a spider's cocoon of violet aura trails. With his body taking the brunt of that devastating assault, blood erupted everywhere. And the pontiff bled hard. But the blood that spilled wasn't red at all. It was black, foul and rotten. Slash! Fry kept carving, his speed climbing with every blow. The web thickened and thickened, its strands multiplying until they all converged on a single point. The pontiff's body, which took everything. Fry kept driving through him, too fast to stop. Hemmed in, the pontiff slashed wildly right and left, his bestial scream echoing across the field and dragging every gaze his way. It was a scream of desperation and grief. The sound of a beast torn apart by a worse beast. Slash! In a flicker, Fry severed the pontiff's right leg, sending him reeling, scarcely able to stand. Fry was moving so fast that, from afar, he was a violet bullet circling his prey, punching through him with every pass. Slash! Another cut, and the pontiff's left hand fell away. The shattered knight's appearance turned pitiful, and even his howling dwindled as he collapsed and writhed in the dirt. Even down, Fry didn't stop. He kept running his circles, driving through him again and again. Then, with one quick stroke, the helmet the pontiff had worn for years spun away, revealing what lay beneath that iron shell. In that instant, those close enough to see his face were stunned by what they saw. Pontiff Sullivan, that colossal monster who had killed so many and filled their hearts with fear, was nothing but a plain man whose features were carved with suffering. His hair was ash-gray, devoured by age. His skin was ghastly pale and hideously darkened from years of living on nothing but tainted blood. His eyes were wholly red, as if he had wept blood. His bones jutted under shriveled, ulcerated skin. Those mad eyes of the pontiff that had terrified so many no longer looked frightening now that their cover was gone. They were merely eyes steeped in deep sorrow and utter despair, the eyes of a man whose story few knew. Pontiff Sullivan, you are living proof, the clearest example, of the demons' crimes and what they did to humankind, Fry said, voice cold, as he kept breaking the pontiff down. I know there's nothing left in those dead eyes but despair and hatred, rage and suffering. You've been through so much, and there's nothing I can give you now but my regret, by ending this wretched torment of yours. So, forgive me. Slash! With a final blow carrying all of Frey's might, the black blood sprayed more fiercely than ever. The pontiff dropped his sword at last and crumpled, no strength left to stand. His chest cleaved wide open, his eyes gone lifeless. He looked up at the sky one last time. Its light fell across him, and a glimpse of the past passed before him. Enough to bring those monstrous eyes back to what they once were, for a single heartbeat. 1 second only. Yet it was enough to draw one last tear. A tear of blood. A farewell that freed him from the curse laid upon him. The curse of demon blood. Ah, Maria. From the pontiff's lips slipped a whisper, an old name no one recognized but him and Fry standing at his side. Farewell, Pontiff Sullivan. To the world. And to the Empire in particular. That was the end of a monster who had terrified so many. Even the Ultras felt much the same toward him. He had butchered countless of them, too. But only a few knew the true story of the man behind that broken armor. The demons have always been the vilest and most terrifying race of all. And humans may be their most prominent recent victims. Humans are different, marked by a strange capacity to adapt, able to endure and live through whatever conditions they're thrown into. That made them the perfect testing ground. Fertile soil waiting to be violated. And that is exactly what happened decades ago, when second-generation demonic contracts first appeared. Where the first generation had been limited to transferring aura from demon to human, this time they granted blood. Tainted, poisonous blood that amounted to a slow death for humans. Some died the instant it was injected. Others turned into nightmare creatures. A few survived, adapted, and became powerful demonic contractors. At the start of the second generation, the Ultras forced their citizens to have that blood injected into their veins for testing. Only a few were spared. At that time there lived a taciturn, upright knight in an old city called Viker. Viker was a lively city with a name and standing among the Ultras. Its people were civilized, no different from the Empire's humans, perhaps even better off. Pontiff Sulivan was the foremost of the knights who guarded that ancient city's peace. He was a good man with a wife and a single beautiful daughter. A family of 3. Everything was calm, ordinary, until the day the second-generation contracts appeared and Viker citizens were forced to have that poison pumped into their bodies. It was a brutal process. In those dark days, women, children, and men alike were dragged from their homes and hauled to filthy laboratories brimming with that thick, black substance. Many died. Others became misshapen, foul beings now known as nightmare creatures. In those days, Pontiff did everything he could to save his family, and because of his rank in the city, his wife and daughter were exempted from the injections. In exchange, he was forced to bear their share, living with an even greater quantity of demon blood rotting in his body. It was pain. It was hell. But Pontiff was a warrior with iron nerves, and he endured, even as the process cast its shadow over him, tugging him apart bit by bit. Later he and the remaining city knights were ordered to hunt the nightmare creatures that kept appearing in greater numbers as the injections continued. With his own hands, with his sword, Pontiff Sulivan killed those monsters who had once been people. People he had lived among, grown up with. Night after night he went out to hunt until late, drowning himself in killing and in the reek of foul demon blood. Sometimes he was so late his wife would go searching for him. She was clever, and she always found him, always calmed him, and she never once failed to bring him home. Despite the demon blood invading his body, Pontiff held on. For his family. But the killings kept repeating, and every time, he was made to inject more demon blood. Pontiff Sulivan was not chosen. His body was never suited to that blood. Only his will kept him going. But will alone is not always enough. There is a limit to what a human can bear. Days passed, one after another. Hunts and injections, again and again, until Pontiff's mind grew drunk on slaughter, and madness took him piece by piece. Then, on a cursed moonlit night, Pontiff Sulivan lost himself and drowned in the blood of his victims. The killing was heavy that night. He found himself drinking his victims' blood and devouring their bodies. Like an animal, he was gone. Unable to sense time, he was so late that his wife went out to look for him. As always, she found him. But this time, her voice was not enough. The monster he had become was not something words could stop. And so he did the unthinkable, staining his hands with blood he should never have shed. Pontiff never truly knew what he did that night. His madness lasted so long that when he finally came to, several days had passed. When his mind began to work again, when he realized what his hands had done, Pontiff felt his world crumble. He rushed home to find the last member of his family. He reached his house and found it in chaos. His heart sank. He went in, searching for his only daughter, Maria. The house was small. It didn't take long. He found her, and how he wished he hadn't. Before him, hanging from a thick rope, she had taken her own life, her body swaying quietly, all signs of life gone. Her mother had died at the hands of her father-turned-monster. For the child, there was no reason left to live, especially after their home was attacked later and she barely escaped death anyway. And so Pontiff Sulivan lost the very people he had suffered to protect. You could even say he caused their deaths with his own hands. That was the final blow. The one that took his self and his mind. What followed was pure madness. Madness as he killed everyone he found, spilled their blood, devoured them. He killed and killed anyone who stood in his way, until he personally slaughtered all the people of his city, then went on to commit a massacre so great the Ultras sealed him off from the world. His power kept growing as he drank demon blood in grotesque quantities, turning him into a savage beast feared across the world. This, in brief, was the story of the broken knight whose life Fry Starlight brought to an end. The end of a silent suffering no one knew, save Pontiff and Fry. To the world and to the Empire, the one who died was not a noble knight or a man, but a vile, loathsome monster whose absence made the world better. What a farce! Fry said it with an expressionless face as he turned away, leaving the Pontiff's corpse behind. He returned to the war, kept fighting, burying another story behind his back. The barren lands of the Ultras once again hosted one of the bloodiest battles yet. Hollows and their forces against the Empire. Soon after, the world witnessed the fall of one of the oldest Hollows of all, Pontiff Sulivan. He died. And with him, the story that would never be told. Only Fry Starlight, the man who slew him, knew it. Fry finished the Pontiff swiftly, then returned to the fight as if nothing had happened. Near the site of their duel, Frey's friends approached the Pontiff's corpse at a slow, wary pace. What they found was wretched. The body ruined by Frey's brutal technique, those relentless, lightning-fast cuts the Pontiff could do nothing to stop. Standing over the Hollow's remains, the former temple students struggled to process what they had just seen. "So this is what Fry is capable of now," said Ceres Moonlight as she descended from the sky. She'd been nearby the whole time, ready to help the instant Fry needed her. But he handled his foe with ease, and it was the Pontiff who would have needed saving, not Fry. "I've heard a lot about him, but this is the first time I've seen him fight right in front of me. He really went easy on me that day," Frost Moonlight said with a strained smile, recalling his friendly spar with Fry, after watching Fry fight seriously, with the intent to kill. Frost realized Fry had never taken him seriously at all. "He's grown so strong he can keep fighting right after killing a Hollow, like he just cut down an ordinary soldier. I can't believe he's the same person who was once my classmate at the temple." Examining the Pontiff's corpse, Dawn Polaris remembered the days he trained alone with Snow and Fry. Once he'd been their peer. He'd always been strong, but never out of reach. Now they couldn't even grasp his shadow. The gap had become immeasurable. And before that overwhelming power, everyone present could only wonder. What did he do? What did he have to sacrifice to gain strength like this? They were exhausted from battle, so they took a moment to breathe. Strength soon returned as a soothing golden light washed over them. Turning toward its source, they saw Uriel joining them. "The Saint! Good work, all of you. Let me bring you back to your best as thanks for what you've done." Uriel's new golden power was far stronger than the old holy aura. Its effects cleaner, deeper. In moments, everyone felt themselves restored simply by basking in that radiance. "Seeing you and Fry here, does that mean the fight against the church is over?" Ellen White asked, coming up to Uriel as an old friend would. Uriel nodded. "Yes, we won." As her words faded, thunderous explosions rolled in from every direction. Snow Leonhart was there too, shaking the battlefield with an endless arsenal of elements. Vermithor gleamed in his hands brighter than ever. He had become a flamboyant, terrifying war machine. The pressure Snow gave off was anything but ordinary. Everyone quickly realized he, too, had grown far stronger than before. Even Demon Valyrian stood out. His feral style and the way he crushed foes with his bare hands set him apart. In these final stages of the battle, when the ancients and the great had fallen, the new generation became the Empire's main strength. Without them, the war would have been lost long ago. Ironically, most of them had survived the purge of the past. The very talents the Ultras had once tried so desperately to kill. They failed, and now they were paying for that failure. "Our allies are strong, but they can't win alone. So please, fight at their side," Uriel urged, inviting everyone back into the fray. For a moment it seemed like people like Fry and Snow could do everything by themselves. Uriel stressed that wasn't true. No matter how small help may seem, it matters. She feared their friends might feel inferior before Fry and Snow's overwhelming power. Ceres's reply proved otherwise. "Don't worry, Uriel Platini. Even if you'd said nothing, I planned to fight anyway." Unfurling her ice wings, Ceres rose into the air again. Because this isn't their war alone. It's ours. Fry Saris. Each had their own reason to fight this war. That had never changed. It seemed everyone present shared Saris's resolve, and Uriel felt relief. They all returned to the battle, with Uriel supporting them from the rear. Chaos deepened. And with the pontiff's fall, the Empire seized a crushing advantage. The barren Ultra's wastes, as ever, cradled one of the bloodiest clashes. Hollows and their hosts against the Empire. And when Fry and Snow tore through hundreds of enemies with terrifying speed, the tide broke. Especially once Fry plunged deep into the puppet ranks. Slash! With a single sweep of his blade, he triggered dozens of explosions, turning puppet bodies into shrapnel. He was too fast. No one could stop him. Simon Manus, show yourself. He roared it, shredding more and more puppets. Earlier, when he spread his aura, Fry had only sensed the pontiff, meaning Simon hadn't been nearby. But that wasn't certain. So Fry tried to draw him out. Simon Manus could see and hear whatever his puppets saw and heard. I know you can hear me, Simon. Come out and face me. Slash! Leaving ruin in his wake, Fry pushed farther in. Do you plan to keep hiding until I smash every precious puppet you've made? Is that it? Slash! No problem then. I don't mind. Slash! I can fight your flimsy toys for days and they won't even scratch me. Blades whirling, Fry turned the battlefield into a vast graveyard of puppets. He could handle them all. But somewhere inside, he was genuinely surprised by their numbers. It was as if Simon's puppet army had multiplied many times over since their last fight. Simon had a grotesque method for turning people into puppets using a strange blue substance. Worse in its way than foul demon blood. It was how he'd turned Clanna Starlight into a puppet in the past and sicked her on Fry. Fry still remembered that day with blinding clarity. His feelings might have cooled, but he truly wanted to kill Simon. To settle that debt. Yet no matter how deep he cut, no matter how many puppets he felled, he found no trace of him. Then, when he'd begun to think there would be no clue at all, Fry heard a voice he never expected to hear. It rolled over the battlefield. The buzz of loudspeakers. Amid the fire and wreckage, scattered puppets appeared, each carrying a speaker, the very kind Fry had seen in the puppet city long ago. And through them, that cursed voice returned. Ah, is this thing on? Check. Check. War and ruin, fire and blood, while countless fought for their lives. That man's grating voice came from everywhere. I see you're all fighting quite fiercely to stay alive. So I won't take too much of your time. Kiki kiki. Simon chuckled, light and mocking. Fray's expression tightened at the sound of him. To be honest, I hadn't planned to address you at all. But Fry Starlight's sudden appearance made me change my mind. I didn't expect him to show. It's been a while, hasn't it, Lord Starlight? I wonder if you're still holding a grudge after our last meeting. You're angry, aren't you? Even though I only killed one of your friends, while you destroyed all my puppets. That's hardly fair. Simon prattled on as if he were hosting a broadcast, not a war. Fry, slicing down puppets, visibly bristled. Cut the nonsense, Simon, and face me. Haha. And why would I do that, Fry Starlight? If I fought you now, the match wouldn't be fair. Slash. Fry destroyed a cluster of speaker puppets, but Simon's voice kept piping in from elsewhere. You're not the same young man anymore, Lord Starlight. In a short time you've become a true monster. And monsters like you can only be handled by other monsters of your kind. Far from the battlefield, seated calmly before a strange machine, Simon Manus spoke with a smile. Clad in his elegant black coat and tall hat, he looked exactly as he had the last time. Before him, a reactor whirred violently, blue aura coalescing around it. A savage pressure thrumming through the chamber as Simon relished the moment. The ignorant empire, the foolish ultras, even the demons who fancy themselves the apex of creation. All of you are blind to the truth. You don't grasp the real mission of the evolution I'm pursuing. True evolution. The kind that will make me a perfect being your small minds cannot comprehend. He was undeniably strange, grandstanding about his ideals in the middle of a war. Every word only confirmed how far gone he was. With my own hands I'll carve a path to a world utterly different, free of the ceaseless nonsense of humans and demons alike. Mark my words. The decisive moment is very close, because I, Simon Manus, will show you what the true pinnacle of evolution looks like. An evolution that will let me surpass the gods. Simon Manus's proclamation swelled in fervor with every word. There was no stopping him. This bastard's gone insane. Fry sighed, irritated by what he was hearing. Simon sounded just like Bladier after he'd swallowed the souls of millions. The madness that comes when power floods in all at once. It's laughable to claim you'll surpass the gods while you won't even show your face. Fry shot back. You're no god. You're a coward who won't shut up. Simon chuckled. Patience, Lord Starlight, a patience. It won't be long before you and I meet face to face. And when we do, you will bow before the gods soon to be born. Ahahaha. While Simon Manus's laughter echoed everywhere, the battle itself reached its final phase. The puppet army could no longer hold. In the end, the Empire won the clash that would be called the Graveyard of Puppets. They had slain the Hollow Pontiff Sullivan, and that alone was a crushing advantage. But they couldn't find Simon Manus anywhere, meaning he'd never come to the field in person. His words, though, his deranged broadcast, stayed in many minds. It wasn't something they heard every day. To many he sounded unhinged, to others terrifying. One thing was certain, the fight with him was very close now. That night, they buried the dead while the survivors reformed their lines. Fry and his companions had helped secure the victory, but the Empire's side had already suffered heavily before they arrived. They had lost half their force. Barely a little over 2,000 remained, the only troops they could spare for the Blue Front. One major enemy, the Pontiff, had fallen, but Simon Manus and his puppets remained, and the Hollow Ludwig had yet to appear, his intervention a constant possibility. The situation was far from ideal and they couldn't call for reinforcements. The other fronts had their hands full. Even so, with Fry and Snow present, fresh support hardly seemed necessary. After the battle, Fry and Snow were summoned to a lengthy meeting led by the man in charge of the front, Galvarion Sunlight. He clearly understood the current political winds. Proof he stood with Aegon Valyrian. But with Fry holding many allies on this front, Gal had no practical way to move against him and so tried to harness Frey's strength instead. Fry left the meeting early, indifferent to Gal's attempts to keep him on a leash. Soon he was moving through the camp, past soldiers who either greeted him respectfully or stepped hurriedly out of his path. Whether he liked it or not, he had become famous among Imperial ranks. Fame that's good for nothing, Fry muttered, slipping away from the bustle. Alone, he kindled a small campfire and sat before it, letting his thoughts wander. He wanted to finish with the Hollow Front quickly and rejoin the others, but now he was being forced into a hunt with Simon Manus, whose true plan no one knew. Annoying, to say the least. He needed quiet to sort his head out. He didn't get it. Within minutes, a small crowd drifted over. Ah, alone again as usual, Snow said, arriving with the former temple students. They all came up behind him and Fry sighed, making space. I was alone. Not anymore. He found himself surrounded by many companions sharing the quiet and the firelight. Peers of his generation like Dawn, Saris, and the rest, and the older ones. Uriel, Eileen, even Frost. For a moment, it felt like they'd all returned to the temple, and a gentle nostalgia settled over them. Memories of better days long gone. Gathered around the campfire, the temple students came one after another, forming a ring around Fry Starlight. Familiar faces, and others Fry had never seen before, were all there, and their number kept swelling until a single fire barely felt enough. From among them, Demon Valyrian stepped forward and took the lead, sitting down across from Fry. Lighting a campfire before the battle and talking through our fights from this whole war. I love this vibe. Demon spoke in his usual loud, heavy tone. Being the only one still wearing armor made him stand out more than anyone else. From the looks of it, he could no longer remove the golden dragon plate since fusing it to his body. Vibe? And who said we're gonna talk about our fights? Didn't you get enough of that in the briefing? Selena shot back at him. Ah, damn it, women? Demon grumbled, shaking his head before continuing. We're in a war. That's the main topic. Or would you rather we talk about love and your silly relationship with that lucky bastard standing next to you? He jabbed a finger at Dawn, turning Selena's face beet red. There's nothing between us, she snapped, while Demon scowled harder. Ah, you're one of those girls who deny their feelings to the very end. I really hate your type. He kept stoking the flames, hotter than the campfire itself. Despite the tension, he managed to make someone burst out laughing. It was Fry. Laughing honestly for the first time in a while. Demon. You really say whatever pops into your head without a second thought. Fry was plainly enjoying the spectacle. You don't get to laugh, Starlight. You're worse than she is on that front. Demon tipped his chin toward Frey's own tangled situation, juggling two girls at once. Uriel was present, and she clearly didn't like what she heard, but Fry didn't care. Fine, Demon. Let's talk about the war. Agreeing to his initial suggestion made Demon grin with satisfaction. It's simple. Everyone here reports what they've done since the war began. Think of it like a temple exam. And whoever did best gets the top mark. Ah, I see. At last, everyone realized what Demon was trying to do. That's so childish. The comment drifted in from the side, souring his mood again. What now, Ceres Moonlight? Why do you girls insist on opposing me to the bitter end? Ceres shook her head. I'm not opposing you. I just think it's childish. You're making war sound like a game. Women. He grumbled again, but Frost Moonlight stepped in before things could escalate. No need to wind each other up. Treat the game as a breather from all the strain. Frost seemed fine with Demon's idea, and that got things moving quickly. Good. Then let each of you tell us what you've accomplished since the war began, said Ellen White, the former student council president, taking charge. One by one, they shared their tallies. Most present were among the temple's finest, and the fact they'd survived this long spoke to their skill. Many had slain a great number of ultras since the start, but overall, besides Frost Moonlight and Ellen White, the new generation of the temple led the board on raw achievements. Since the war began, 450 ultras have died by my hand, and I've killed 11 of their commanders, Demon reported. He'd been active from day one, and by the numbers he outpaced most of the circle. I don't know my total count, Selena said, but I've taken down dozens of mist aberrations, each around us plus, which should be decent, right? Her feats were on Demon's level, perhaps even beyond. Ceres wasn't far behind either. But when it came to achievements, two people eclipsed everyone else. In second place stood Snow Lionheart, who had done plenty in his own right. I defeated a Nightmare Lord, the Cosmos Dot, and killed the Hollow Smo. I also prevailed over a bishop, Michael Platini. As for how many enemies I've slain, I don't know. Snow summarized his path. Those few names alone placed him far above the rest by a wide margin. Above everyone. Except one. Ah, Fry Starlight. It's a foregone conclusion. I've been hearing about him since the war began. When Frey's turn came, whispers spread, tallying up rumors of what he'd done. Hearing the chatter about himself, Fry sighed and began to recount. Let's see my accomplishments in the war. He tried to recall, counting his victims slowly. First, no idea how many ultras I've killed. A few tens of thousands, maybe more. I don't know. He said it like it meant nothing. Yet that alone silenced the circle, the gap laid bare. I also took down Lord Gvardiel, killed Dragoth, recently ended the Hollow Pontiff Sullivan, and I've beaten Gavid Lindemann and V, though I couldn't finish them, unfortunately. He paused, thinking. I've killed a lot of the church's followers. Ah, and I think I beat their angels of war, too. I fought Joseph Bladier. I've faced most of the Ultra's lords, plus some demons like Beatrice. And another who came with her. Fry was about to continue, But Ellen cut in. That's enough. Fry Starlight, you're the winner. There's no need to list anything else. Ellen cut him off, a headache forming from the sheer weight of the names Fry was tossing out so casually. The others agreed. He's fought every enemy commander and killed tens of thousands. Doesn't that make it feel like he fought the whole war by himself? Someone said, and once again the circle fell silent. He wasn't wrong. It could be said that Fry Starlight had carried most of the war so far on his own, making many of them realize that, had he not been there, they might already have lost. That's honestly terrifying, Frost sighed. Not long ago, he'd set Fry as his target, someone to challenge and surpass. But since the war began, he'd had to face how naive that was. They now lived in entirely different worlds of power. Seeing how far you've all come, especially you, Fry Starlight, I can't help but laugh when I remember your first days at the temple, Ellen said with a gentle smile.